Don't miss the awesome Naruto stories my sister creates. Her last channel was hacked, so to stay in the loop, please subscribe to her new channel. It would mean a lot to her, and you won't regret it. Hello to all lovers of lemon scenes. I invite you all to my boosty so you can watch your favorite Naruto What If stories in complete comfort. A subscription to Naruto Lemon, the first video with a full lemon, is already on my boosty channel. Dare! Or not, but I think it's worth studying. Having looked around a lot, I decided to sort out the troubling questions and went back to the door. Having studied it, I understood the essence. One seal is tied to another, something like a signal, simple, but effective. Deciding not to focus on this, I decided to walk around the building. You never know, I'll find something. More than half an hour passed to inspect this room. Well, not a lot. Several books were found, but only on history, however, but also two even on Fuin, albeit in full. Ahem, okay, in our world they are already worth their weight in gold, the rest is either torn or it's been stolen for a long time. I found some toys, paintings, some even in good condition, a number of household items, in good condition. A couple of boxes, one of them is musical, the second, rather with a surprise, it seems, and it's all unfamiliar, but somehow familiar. How did this happen? There is blood here in places, there were bones somewhere. Who attacked? It seems to have been mentioned somewhere, even studied at the academy, but it seems to have been forgotten. I looked sadly at the lonely toy, a wicker doll. Most likely it was someone's. It's even a pity, even though I'm a demon, I also have feelings. Having packed them and a number of other finds, many of which breathe the spirit of the lost people, I decided to go to the second floor. The staircase here was twisted and still stood firmly, although there was some creaking throughout the area. Having risen, I decided to explore this floor. After an hour of careful research, both the entire floor and the building as a whole, many more different things were found, and even again several books and one diary. I will read it later, especially since there is clearly some kind of code there. I'll figure it out. Having chosen a room for myself and unloaded the now unnecessary belongings, I plopped down on the bed to do everything in general. I didn't want to do anything right now, just forget and sleep, but I needed to take medicine and eat. Having completed these steps, I still lay down to think. What we have is a bunch of junk, a row of toys, a few antiques, a row of rarities and a few books on top with a diary. I took the last one named in my hand. Well, my friend, I will obviously need you and I will solve your code and understand what is written there, or I am not Uzumaki Naruto. After lying there for a couple of hours, I got up. I didn't want to lie down. Taking out my notes and several scrolls, I sat down for them. At the same time I'll sort out and sort the books while I have time. Until the evening I studied new knowledge and repeated old ones, until I completely collapsed from fatigue. The next morning, I decided to take up this diary. It really doesn't give me any peace. It seems that he was the manager of this establishment. Perhaps there is even valuable information there now. This entry haunts me. It doesn't at all. It's just like a set of letters, but seemingly rearranged. What kind of code is it? Triachulu chtn bylntn at puva in krulishes pri, vismsoy muln ins and shayabaya. I said mentally. This tirade out loud would have broken my tongue for sure. Moreover, these numbers on the cover with letters, 5 words, we should see them all from beginning to end. Are these tongue twisters? This order means something. A.N.P.S.R. These are some clues. You will need to find answers. There is clearly something important here. Moreover, the whole diary is littered with such, copybooks. What a job. Getting up and starting my typical routine of thinking about everything, I reached the exit of the library. So, we need to check the ruins. Perhaps we'll start going around this thing one by one, maybe where the records have survived or what. Having walked through this entire village inside and out in a few hours and climbed everything, adding to my already small collection of rubbish, I was returning back. What we have is a lot of rubbish, several new books, although almost all of them only have historical value, except for one. And a curious magazine, how it survived is still a mystery. When you come back tired after noon, try unloading. The rubble in the hot sun was still in my condition. I went up. Having reached my temporary habitat, I threw off a couple of scrolls with sealed things, also leaving only that journal in my hands. Sitting down at the table, I took it in my hands and began to study it in detail. So, this is apparently the journal of the village elder. Now we'll sort it all out. 2 hours later. Just general information and coded mentions of places, nothing significant, well, reports. This manager is Ariza, why make it so complicated, then? No, of course, I understand everything, but this is some kind of nonsense, honestly, like, if anything, solve this. Letters flashed through my head, ANPSR. Dash, dot, just don't say that there are names in the code, or that, so stop. I got up from my seat and went to get the diary. Taking it out I went back. Arizu, but this part doesn't give us anything, one of the 5 symbols, but if that's the case, we need to reread that magazine. Half an hour later. So, everything that is connected with her, and it's clear I read, it's quite possible that this is so, that means there is something in it. N is Nolan, her love is apparently, otherwise I don't understand, just what does P, also a name mean now? Or what? I sat on this puzzle for a long time until I understood it and decided to put it aside. Well, hey, it's time to fuse brains. However, it's worth looking in the places where these two formerly lived, maybe there will be some clues there, I thought. Having decided that, I went to the place of Ariza's former residence. By the way, it was not that far from the library. I had already been there, it was worth taking a closer look. Having reached the place, I began my inspection, again picking up all the trash and looking for at least some clues. A couple of hours passed, during which time I was completely exhausted. Well, he spent almost the whole day on this. Unable to bear it. I kicked one snag with my foot soaked in chakra, however, there was a recess under it. Whoa, this looks like my reward for all my work, I wonder what's in there. Looking there, I discovered an old stash. Apparently there was a mini cellar, and the tree probably remained here after the battles, no one moved it. Having climbed there and looked around, I found a row of cans with seams, even all sorts of things. It's not the same, but it will come in handy. If anything happens, then I'll tell my sister, she loves sweets. I thought while packing the cans, but I got so carried away that I knocked something over. Yes, what the F, I said, thinking that I had broken something. Looking down, I saw that there was a folder lying there, and it apparently fell out from above, when it touched the rack. I looked at it and sat down there. This is the diary of some Surin, or her mother or grandmother, judging by the notes. After flipping through it for about half an hour, I thought I had wasted it, but my daughter is so happy with Nolan, she's been with him since she was 15, and she even came up with a couple of words for her cipher since then, which she didn't say. Yes, and I don't need to know, you never know, I'm such a chatterbox. I read it out loud. Well, this seems like nothing, but Nolan and 15 years, HMM. If this is so, then I decided to take note, but there are still 2 words left. It was mentioned there that she came up with them because of them, but what could be an S and H? This is, yes, no, well, no, there can't be happiness, but it's worth taking note. And the last thing, what? Heaven? Where do all the couples end up after? I faltered from such a stupid and at the same time brilliant move, so having packed everything I considered necessary, I moved back. Having entered his abode, he sat down at the table again. So, now is the moment of truth, the first, Triatulus CHTNBYLNTN at Puva in Krulishes PRI, Vismsoy Muln INS and Shayabuya, second, ANPSR, third, especially these numbers on the cover with letters, 5 words, all are important from the beginning to the end, we must see them. Ciphers are often encrypted by letters, sometimes changing their places, for example, from certain words, with rules, so the letters are there. Let's start. 20 minutes later. Finally, it happened. Madara is riding the out of Hashirama. I couldn't hold back my emotions anymore. I hid what was according to the regulations in the storage room for 3, time is short, I don't feel the barrier. But this is interesting, apparently these numbers in the Elder's Journal are not just a code, but a designation of a storage facility, possibly the entire island. I voiced my thoughts out loud. It's strange about the barriers, why were they sleeping? After all, even during a siege, if I understand correctly, it was enough to make an opening and push them through the corridor. I'll need to think about this later, I make a mental note to myself. In the meantime, it's time to eat. Evening is already outside. With all these secrets, yes, training and medications are not expected either. The rest of the day went according to the previously planned spontaneous schedule. The next day, I decided to train a little. The weather here is excellent, as in the entire land of fire. However, the air is clean and there is no need to make unnecessary movements. Even the energy here is different, as if, well, I can't describe it. Maybe I'll even recover faster than I thought. I feel great. Today I'll continue my training little by little, and I'll study the books I found, take the most important things, and then we'll see. I made plans for the day. After warming up, I started training with chakra, little by little. From the elements and weak and medium techniques known to me, I'm even gradually developing the movement seal. After finishing the training, which can more or less be called that, I decided to take a break, and at the same time delve into some more Fuin, you never know. And now, an hour later, already tired of being disgusted by what was happening, I conclude. Yes, your mouth, how is it? I look at the kanji on the parchment, where there are explanations on the side of it. Seal of bodily tissue regeneration, are you serious? Can they also be used to treat? I'm already tired of being upset about the level of Fuin, but these are only crumbs. Sometimes I begin to understand why my clan was destroyed, for the same reason they made me a demon, fear and misunderstanding, but this in no way justifies them, I concluded. With logical conclusions, I began to study this seal. If I can apply it, it will obviously speed up the treatment significantly. Perhaps in a couple of days I will be on horseback again. The whole day passed on this task. Finally I finished with this huge seal. It seems simple, but it's still for me. Now I doubt my genius. However, everything in the world is relative. Perhaps I can someday become a master in this field. But I like him, however, this Fuin. For half an hour, with the help of a clone, I applied a series of kanji, merging them into the seal and activated it. After a few minutes, I already felt how it became easier for me to breathe, divine. Having gone to do simple things for the rest of the day, I almost forgot about printing. Only before going to bed, I decided to check my condition, and was surprised. At this rate I would really be in full combat readiness in 2 days. Plopping down on the bed, I picked up the book. So, I'll still read Yuzushiyo's story. After all, my home, at least now, and after everything, I can't help but do this. So a couple of hours passed. The time was already closer to midnight. After reading almost everything that was in the book, I began to think. Yuzushiyo turns out to be the oldest founded village. It had already existed for more than 500 years and was founded according to beliefs by one of the descendants of Ashura, the son of the sage of the 6 paths and the heir to his will, Ninshu. By the way, what sounds consonant with ninjutsu, however, this art, as it is written, was invented by Indra, another son of the sage and the progenitor of the Uchiha clan. Strange, then how did Ashura and the sage fight? Or did they use ninjutsu themselves? Where the line between propaganda and the beginning of logic is unclear. I stopped these conclusions for now. By the way, as I said, part of the country of fire was under the protectorate of the whirlpool, and they were the country of the whirlpool, and they had an alliance with the first, in honor of which everyone had this symbol embroidered on their vests. I knew for a long time that he was ours, but what is he doing there? Only now, why are they silent about it? And what actually happened is clear. Where Konoha was, they and Senju had an alliance with Konoha. But there was such a culture. You read about the Will of Life and just imagine this holiday in honor of spring, Yori no Odori, and in general the very system of organizing the village and the island. The whole story and the fact that my clan was peace-loving, although it was not afraid of blood, and they were nicknamed the Scarlet-Haired Devils for this. Now I may regret that I am a brunette. And they were them because of the value of the clan's blood. They kidnapped them, wanted to make them a concubine, killed one of them, death. A woman, although deprived of her rights, is sacred and revered almost as a deity. The head of the family is the husband and she cannot contradict him, but nevertheless, they did not tolerate violence. This was also limited by a number of laws. And how much knowledge, and how much strength. Approximately the population was several thousand Uzumaki, almost all were shinobi, without taking into account non-clan or adjacent cohabitants. And how could this happen? So many shinobi, such feuns, and they were more masters at them than I was by many heads, and the barriers were the same. Stop. Something dawned on me, and yet it was the most unpleasant thing. I hope I just now came up with another heresy, otherwise it will be complete pie. Again I took the book and went to reread about Uzushio's relationship with the outside world. Trade and so on. So, after concluding an alliance with the Senju, Konoha where keys were transferred to deactivate the barrier, to allow passage of envoys or delegations, in a certain amount, Mito Uzumaki also married Senju Hashirama and a number of others before. I did not read further, because I went to look for similar transfers further. No, the last history book, about Kushina's age, and it doesn't have this. It could mean two things. First, there were traitors among the Uzumaki, who opened the barrier, or that Konoha did this by helping the attackers, and perhaps she herself was in their ranks. This is incredible, but it explains a lot. Perhaps there were such people among the Uzumaki, that is, both options at once. However, I doubt something. I finished. It will be necessary to get to the bottom of the truth. I made a mental oath to myself, closing this monologue. With all these thoughts I almost fell asleep. Having decided to write down the most important thing, I found the strength to get up and took a decrepit but clean notebook. Half an hour later, he wrote down all his thoughts and could no longer help but close his eyes. Having reached the bed again, he fell asleep, as soon as his head touched the surface. End POV Naruto. POV Naruko. When I got up in the morning, I didn't know what to do. There was some kind of condition, or something else. Kurama, what's wrong with me? I asked. What are you talking about? He said in a deep voice, but didn't say anything else, falling silent. A few seconds later, he gave an answer. Why did you fall out of the oak tree? Everything is fine with you. Why are you scaring me like that? I thought I didn't keep track somewhere, he said. No, it's just, well, I don't know how to say it. I have a feeling that I'm finally calm, but it seems like everything is really not like that, so I'm thinking, maybe they slipped me something? She asked excitedly. He paused and paused without making a sound, but then he let it out. Yeah, for example, brains, that would be just right. You should look wiser. It's better to take an example from your brother in this. Naturally, this brat laughed at the entire subconscious. This made me just as purple as possible, but swallowing my indignation, I went out into the street, offended. Having scored on this rug, I headed to the training ground. After all, I need to keep myself in shape. When I was almost finishing, Sakura called out to me. Hey, Naruko, have you heard the news? She asked. No, I've been here since the morning and haven't gone anywhere else, I answered her. Well then listen, it seems like this Naruto has disappeared. They can't find him, but he's clearly not dead. Can you imagine? She spoke. So, after all, my brother disappeared? This is good. Now it's clear what kind of feeling it was in the morning. It suddenly became so good. I hope we'll see you soon. I already miss you terribly. This is wonderful. Thank you Sakura, with incredible joy, I almost knocked her off her feet. What is this? This is bad. He is an apostate and must be punished. She said without understanding. At this moment, I realized two things. First, Kurama was clearly mistaken, and it was definitely worth sharing my brains with her. Second, that I need to somehow break these glasses for her until this happens on its own, if it happens. Well, I clearly agree with this, at least you weren't like that, even with your ahem. Glasses, as you call them, this rug concluded. Sakura, that's what I'll tell you, someday, perhaps you will understand, but until you become a shinobi and play it, no, I finished, moving away from her and getting ready for business. She didn't have time to answer anything, I had already left the training ground. End POV Naruko. Karen's POV. A couple of days have passed since we met with Naruto, and since then Sasuke has not been herself, often even snapping at me. I rubbed my isthmus where his mark was, it slightly responded with a tingling chakra. This is exactly his chakra, although it is dark but very tasty. But it is also light, so mixed and chaotic that it is mesmerizing. I thought about everything in my mind, especially his personality, but I also remembered about his sister. I wonder what she's like. Will we become friends with her too? Will we see each other at all? I would really like this. All my life I dreamed of a family, and even more of a brother and sister, but I remembered my childhood and my mother. I really wanted to cry, but then I remembered him and the words that he said, as well as Sasuke's monologue that evening when Suigetsu got her. That's when she told me that they didn't know their parents, or rather Naruto found out when he was 12 years old, but a little later, he died but told everything to his sister, and then was resurrected. I can't even wrap my head around how it's possible, but the fact that his father is the fourth Hokage himself is in general, and they also grew up as hated orphans, so it's not for me to complain. We stopped at a rest stop for now, the guys went to scout out the news and scan the surroundings. Appa, here we are, this empty-headed misunderstanding, Suigetsu, gave away. Have you heard the news? They say this Naruto of yours, Sasuke, is missing, but clearly not dead in general. He generally told you then. I didn't listen further, he was able to leave and everything will be fine, this makes me happy, it means I won't be alone. Again I rubbed the isthmus, it again responded with chakra. A few hours later, we got ready and set off. I don't know why I think about him at all, but I always wanted a family, that means he's like a brother to me, right? I was thinking a lot, and only a wave of negativity from Sasuke sobered me up. In bewilderment, I stared at her, she half turned to look at me and was clearly dissatisfied with something. As soon as I turned around, she turned away, snorting, "What did I do to her? She's my friend, right? What did I do to you? I don't know what happened between you and Naruto, but he doesn't like you much, why me? After all, you're like family to me too," I thought, almost falling into a blues. Mechanically, I already rubbed my isthmus, it again responded with tingling and chakra, a very pleasant chakra, it calmed me down and set me in the right mood. It's okay, we'll figure it out, well, and she can be understood, after all, it went horribly, and the meeting and conversation for her was not the most pleasant, I'll break through, am I an Uzumaki or who? This time the seal itself, as if alive, responded to this call, as if encouraging it. Thank you, I conveyed it mentally, but with all gratitude. Thank you very much, I promise I will be an Uzumaki worthy of my ancestors, and if necessary I will shake the fuin out of you, you won't get rid of me so easily, I thought a little mischievously, lifting my head up again. Already in high spirits, not paying attention to anything, I continued on my way with my team. End POV Karen. The next morning. I woke up, generally early, although I don't know what time it is, turning over on my back I began to remember all the events of the past days. So, with history, everything is clear, for now, a couple of points I hope will become clearer in the future, let's finish this, was the first thought in my head. The most interesting thing now is the diary, except for the last phrases I still haven't deciphered it. Maybe there are some notes in there, I thought rationally. Having tensed, I decided to remember the map, which I saw yesterday in the book. Apparently, the location of the settlements on the island is like a shuriken. It was even mentioned in that book, and I am apparently on the right extreme part of the island. I think that after I get up, I need to go straight to training, and finally get weights, otherwise I clearly haven't had time for them lately, and try to use a new type of chakra training. I made a plan. I remembered this method, which is extremely difficult, especially for the Uzumaki themselves. Control is needed, however, with the help of this method it develops in the same way and even much faster than the volume of chakra with its help. Having thought about this matter, I decided that I would first examine my condition and then decide. Having collected my thoughts, I got up and went to the diary. It's still worth deciphering it completely. After all, there should have been useful information there. Sitting down at the table, taking it in my hands and a decrepit notebook next to it, I began to translate and write down important things separately with notes. A couple of hours later. What can I say? In essence, there is little of anything valuable, a lot of routine and reporting, according to the position and the materials entrusted. Perhaps the most important thing here is the mention of several code objects, and some even had a link to the names of the villages. There's even that mysterious Troika and Toyosai are often mentioned together. Apparently, perhaps the storage facility is located there. I made my conclusions. There were mentions that a seal was used for movement, apparently with the help of it in such cases, according to the charter, valuable items were evacuated to storage. Remembering where it is and what this settlement is like, I sighed. It's clear, that means it's possible that we'll have to move north, but that's only later, when I'm sure that I'm completely healthy. I closed the topic with this argument. In all this work, I forgot that I wanted to look at both the bingo book itself and especially my page. So, but now, why not? I think it's possible, before the morning procedures. Having taken it out of the seal, I began to look for myself in it until I found myself, by the way, almost at the beginning. Real name, Naruto. Last name / clan / affiliation, Uzumaki. Nickname, Jigaku / demon. Rank, SS, if you are alone, run, but if he gets angry, you are dead. It is especially dangerous when you get in his way. Contact is highly not recommended if you do not want to lose your life. Abilities, improved genomes, blue flame, features, temperature exceeds 6,000 degrees. Intangibility, unknown origin, the ability to pass objects through oneself. Elements, Kato, perhaps others, because there are genomes, but it is not known for certain. Jujitsu, the Rinnegan is a previously mythical eye that has only been seen on two people before. One is believed to be the sage of the six paths, the other is the leader of the Akatsuki. Appearance, tall brunette, similar in appearance to an Uchiha, hair grown in a hedgehog, tall, over 2 meters, dresses in dark clothes. Her distinctive attribute is gloves with claws. On her face there are 3 stripes in the form of a mustache, scars. One eye, with a vertical pupil, similar to a cat, red, the other, Jujitsu, purple. Reward, for the head, 60 million ryo. For the whole body, with entire important parts of the body, 80 million. Nihwa, 60 liams just for the head, that's money. Maybe we can come up with some kind of blood clone and hand over his head? I thought sarcastically. No, so what? All the same, it will then disappear in the blood or explode, depending on how you set it up. However, you still need to worry about it. This is a dreary thing. I ended my joke to myself on this note. However, they don't know so much. It's good that the Fuin is a secret. That's what the Rinnegan was burned. That's bad. It's good that they don't know his abilities themselves. However, this is only until the first meeting. Well, Raiton is also a useful trump card, maybe in battle. However, maybe that's not all, but for now that's enough. Perhaps I'll get down to business, I thought. Getting up and getting ready, taking out the weights, I went to the vacant lot that I had noticed earlier. Once there, I looked around. What can I say? The view is excellent, but everything is full of potholes. It is clear that there was once a battle here. Thinking about all this again, I brushed aside such thoughts. It's not time, I still have time, I'm already in more or less acceptable condition, so you can use clones for training, mainly knowledge, but no more than 3, otherwise it may be a skiff. I decided to start small like that. Having created 3 clones and given them instructions and material to study, I sent them to the other end of this wasteland. Having created several more clones, I sent them to hone the movement seal over short distances. And I myself decided to try to study a new way of training chakra. This method consists of releasing a concentrated flow of chakra and compressing it into a certain object. A cube is easiest, and holding it with a further expansion of the volume of infusion without destabilizing the technique. It seems clear, we'll figure it out, I thought. I tried it, but it didn't work. A couple of hours passed in attempts to stabilize the flow and maintain the shape of the chakra. Somewhere for lunch. Finally, at least some results. The cube is too large and the amount of chakra in it is too small. You need to compress and supply more. Now it's clear how control is trained. However, the volume of chakra too, with such an intense technique, channels like the hearth often works exhaustively, but without overexerting itself, I noticed. After some time, the clones who trained the mark disappeared. Phew, it's difficult, I need to rest, I said, sitting under the nearest tree and interrupting the training. After another hour, the clones studying the Fuin also disappeared, and my head immediately began to crack, but the seal that had been set in advance helped me stay conscious. Half an hour later, I came to my senses and trudged back to my abode, sorting knowledge along the way. After changing clothes, eating and taking medicine just in case, I went to rest. I woke up only in the evening, with new ideas in my head. If clones are creatures of chakra and the spiritual component, then if they rest, then when dispelled, it is possible to neutralize the effect of excessive stress, but not chakra depletion. Therefore, when learning new knowledge, this is a plus, I thought. Having gotten up with this matter in my head, I again headed to the wasteland. This time I concentrated the chakra, and the clones only studied everything and repeated the Fuin. The other half of them was idle. So evening came and almost night. Having finished, I headed back to prepare for the new day, at the same time sorting through all the knowledge that I had received. A couple more days passed at a similar pace, during which I learned a lot from books, but of course, to apply this you need weeks of training, and to apply it at a level, months. What about the power? I started training again with weights and am slowly getting used to them again, almost regaining my previous load. My condition is excellent. I have deactivated the seal for now. You can say I'm healthy. Well, I think it's time to get out to Toyosai. I have a course and a direction, otherwise I've been here for almost a week, but I'll probably spend a couple more weeks here, and for the future, if anything, there will be a good place. The main thing is to leave a distinctive seal, I thought. Gathering all the things and sealing them in scrolls, and sealing them. Yes, now I can do that too. I moved to the exit from the village, to the north. I'm even used to these ruins, a little more and I could even call such a place home. It's calm here, and the places are beautiful. Maybe, if it works out, we'll live here with my sister, if everything goes well, he concluded almost without thinking. Under such thoughts, I went outside the village. I walked along the valley, more or less. Animals were often encountered, several were killed. What can I say? They were already running out of food. 4 hours later I was already in place. New ruins could be seen in the distance. But apparently Toyosai, well, I'll find a storage facility here. I hope it wasn't found before me. However, everything is possible, I concluded. Half an hour later I was already at the entrance to this, place. It's hard to even call it a settlement. Literally everything here was razed to the ground, which is as strange as possible, I thought. After all, the invasion could only go through the mainland, because the rest is nonsense. However, it's not worth saying for sure. So, I came from almost the same side, from the southwest. And there, the village was in way better condition, despite that, which was also ruins. I concluded this fact. I went into this, village and looked around. However, there is another version. They were most likely looking for something here, or, I don't even know, there are no options at all. In any case, you need to examine this area and start from the southernmost side. The notes mentioned that it was in it, object number 3, that there should be. I finished my thoughts. Having created 10 clones, I sent them to scout the area and headed off myself. 3 hours later I was already in the center. The clones had dispersed, transferring memories. In general, nothing significant, but my head hurts, a little. Having created 2 clones again, I sent them for brushwood, while I myself remained to prepare the game and at the same time a place for it. So, what we have is absolutely nothing, but it's not scary. There are a couple of ideas, but even so, nothing serious, I thought. I hope they carefully disguise the place itself and it is intact, but considering that the heads of libraries and other valuable institutions were forced to come up with a 5-digit code for the registration journal, and even with a reverse, I think this is so. While I was thinking about this, the clones returned. We sat down and they helped cook the meat on an improvised grill made from trash. However, about him, when the clones returned, they brought a few more valuable things, and I found a couple, but nothing extraordinary. While one clone and I were doing this, the second one had an urge to study something. It became really interesting, but taking a break from cooking is not a royal thing. "You'll never believe what I found," he exclaimed when he returned. Deciding to wait like the second clone, I just stayed watching the barbecue. He was apparently offended, but still continued to stick to his line. "Well, okay, by the way, I found a seal of movement on a stone. Knows what she's doing in such emptiness. This was once a training ground." He drawled offendedly. This even made me want to laugh, but I wasn't the only one. I glanced sideways at the other clone, and he apparently understood this too. "Hey, what are you doing, this?" he asked confused. "So we think, are you my clone or Naruki? Come on out, little sister," I shouted, putting my hand to my mouth, looking over his shoulder. He did not understand anything and turned around, looking over his shoulder as if at the second coming of Madara, but did not see anything there. "So, yes, there's no sister here." "Oh, you, yes you, yes I, yes," he couldn't clearly formulate anything out loud. Fahahaha, it broke through between me and my double, but the offended one himself also thought it over and laughed. Apparently it had reached the point of being slow-witted. "So good, a little bit, but now we'll eat and go." The clones nodded and dispelled, passing on their memories. Having made out everything that the clumsy double saw, I chuckled. Really, why put such a seal on a training ground? Okay, some kind of special one or something, but no, according to the records, it was the most inconspicuous training ground, and a small one at that. I began to think. I didn't finish the thought when I realized one thing. The seal, Araizu used it, to transfer everything according to the regulations and others, perhaps, too, which means there is a chance that storage room number 3 is somewhere nearby. I concluded joyfully. With these thoughts in mind, I started the meal. When I finished, I put everything away, and when I got up, I tried to concentrate on it. After a couple of minutes, feeling her, albeit with difficulty, I was able to transport myself to her. Once there, I looked around myself. Nothing remarkable, a rocky area in the distance, the very outskirts of the ruins, and next to it was a stone, or rather a boulder. I examined it for any information, but apart from the seal on it, I didn't find anything useful. You have to think, well, it was not in vain that it was here, and even then the storage facility must be somewhere very close. Otherwise why should they be placed on a stone on the outskirts of the training ground, and even one that abuts the rock? I thought. While doing this and thinking, I sat down, leaning on that same boulder, lost in thought. Coming out of them, I still noticed strange stones on the surface a couple of tens of meters away, as if they were the same boulders, but in the ground. Strange, why is this at the training ground? Approaching there, I carefully examined them. The verdict is that this was clearly not without reason. Finally, this is clearly some kind of entrance. All that remains is to find a hole for blood or something to enter, I thought joyfully. Having carefully examined every centimeter, I found a small depression, about the size of a finger. I hope this thing doesn't tear it off for me, I thought as I cut my finger. After I inserted it there, nothing happened for several seconds. However, then, the ground began to shake under me and eventually spread right across the boulders, pushing them to the side, and opening the way down. Yes, judging by the fact that it is not destroyed and the mechanism works, this place was never found and could not be robbed, which means, I can't wait to study everything, I concluded with enthusiasm. With these thoughts, I headed down underground, unsealing a couple of clubs and an incendiary mixture along with rags. I made torches with the help of Katan. Well, he called a couple of clones, explaining the task to them. With this brethren, we had already gone down several floors and were walking along the corridor. There were a lot of writings around, and the stone walls themselves were dotted with various kanji. I'll find time to sort them out later. Now forward to secrets and knowledge. A few minutes later we found ourselves at the door, where I was able to enter the 5-digit code without errors, because references to it were in Arisu's diary, and they were scattered along some lines, for greater security. Yes, a massive passage protected by a higher fuin through an input seal is something. I admired the power of the clan. The clones and I entered a huge hall where there was everything, shelves, scrolls, mountains of things and various valuables, and so on. My mother, this is it, I concluded out loud. Don't tell me, the clones responded. We literally rushed in different directions, starting to study and collect and sort all the things. I headed to the very center. By the way, there in the distance there was an altar next to a table, around which everything was crammed with things. Having started to deal with all this, I lost track of time until I got to the note. My descendant, I hope that you read this, but if this happens, then Yuzushio has fallen. Are these someone's notes? Apparently, a message from the Yuzukage? I couldn't believe it. This is the end, but if so, I still hope you will be the ancestor of my daughter. I hope she is alive. I'm sorry Kushina that I can't be with you, if this message still reaches you. KK Ashina, that is, our grandfather. I couldn't contain my amazement. My name is Seishi Uzumaki. I apologize for not introducing myself earlier. I don't have time to think clearly. I'm the youngest son of Ashina Uzumaki, apparently the last Yuzukage of the Whirlpool. So, my sister and I are the last heirs, and that means, Mito, was our grandmother? I couldn't help but be surprised. For something I expected it. I even felt sad. But why did she die so early? Was Kurama poisoning her, or, all over the place and Konoha too? Deciding to think about it later, I threw unnecessary thoughts out of my head and again began to read this message, through time. Yes, Mito is my older sister. I hope that she is your grandmother, if you thought about it, but I almost didn't see her, and in general, nothing is known about her condition lately and this is strange. What I wanted to say, forgive me my descendants, what do you stayed here, without us, would really like to be with you, to see your first steps, to encourage your daughter, and in the end, to personally walk her down the aisle. And for us to live as a family, as it is with us was old with the exception of Mito. She decided to sacrifice herself for the good of the clan, stupid older sister. I chuckled through my tears. Yes, older sisters are like that. Know that your great-grandfather loves you too, even though he is evil at times, yes and strict, but kind. He doted on your mother, he always sat with her when he was not doing clan affairs. We love you very much, no less than your mother and grandmother, Ami Uzumaki. She is also an amazing woman. Oh how I would like to be with you, but it's not fate. Forgive us for everything and take care of your mother, she's the only one you have, like probably your father. We've always had a family, the most important thing, live happily. I couldn't stand it, my eyes were already watering all over. I just slid down the side of the balcony and burst into silent crying. After all, I have a heart. After reading a few more lines, I reached the message of my great-grandfather. Dear descendants, I see what my ragamuffin said about me, but don't believe this is slander. But yes, I don't even know you, but I already love you very much, too, no less than mine granddaughter, take care of her. I wish everything the same as my chatterbox son, and I don't have time to add. But what happened next was the worst thing I could ever imagine. Today we were attacked, we immediately sent Kushina to Konoha, but if we knew right away what happened, it would be better to send her away from them, to the most distant countries. Today is June 10th, 48th year from the end of the Shangoku Jidai era, apparently the last day of the whirlpool. Yesterday, Leaf Scouts passed by us, the usual patrol around the island, nothing remarkable, but the next day, the barrier was broken and, like the keys, it's me, as the one who improved it and the one who issued these keys, I say. If we knew what this would lead to, everything would be different. Forgive us for our trust in our sister clan, descendants, this and many other mistakes led us to death. There is no doubt that it was Leaf who helped the attackers, and in some divisions there are cleanup squads, these are clearly ANBUNE, from the new squad, Root, along with them IWA, Kyumo and Kiri. They themselves only became traitors. I don't have time, I would repeat it again, but I'll say one thing, forgive us and just live happily and don't regret anything. The lines of the message ended, and I still looked at the floor for an hour, then I came to my senses and, without emotion, began to collect and sort everything I saw. There were several more messages, but I stuffed them all into one, I'll read them later. Well, how is it there? Is there anything? We have already, one of the clones faltered when he saw the condition of the original. What's happened? I asked a more significant question, the second one. There was no point in explaining, but for some reason it was all the same. I didn't tell them anything, I just printed out that same scroll and handed it over. After a few minutes, one could see how the technique itself, made of chakra and soul, was crying, the technique of the one who was said to have no heart was crying. Nothing, simple revenge, it's stupid, but if any of them get in our way, they're problems. However, I have a couple of ideas for the future, we'll deal with this later, I said, taking the scroll back. Taking those scrolls that they also had, I sealed them on my wrist under their guidance, and then scattered them. I was already ready, therefore, I accepted the repeated information steadfastly, but a tear rolled down my cheek again. The next week, I had a lot to do, everything was cleared out. Yes, to sort, there are a lot of empty scrolls and books that could and should have been filled, at least with dubbing from the original, or in common parlance, with copies. It was a bit complicated here. Firstly, there is a lot of everything and you need to choose the priority and expediency of copying this particular item and not another. Secondly, the copying itself, even so, this is a paragraph. Having dug around superficially, I found a seal with which kanji and capital symbols, using chakra, can be duplicated and transferred to parchment, but on such a scale it is extremely chakra intensive. I also found several dozen whirlpool bandanas there, until I started taking them. Firstly, I'm not worthy, and secondly, there's no need, when the time comes, we'll see. The training continued at its own pace, the clones studied knowledge, others rested, but I trained control and volume of chakra, while simultaneously practicing physically with weights, and for the rest, I tried not to abandon my techniques and dijitsu. At intervals, he continued to improve what he had learned and send clones in the same way, instead of studying with a new one, to improve the affinity with one or another element. The cube has already become smaller, but there is even more chakra in it. In general I am improving slightly. The Rinnegan, there's nothing special, just studied its feature completely and gave it a name, Aminoto Jikara, or the technique of replacing any object in its state with one's body, swapping them in places, even people, most likely. Raiton is going well so far. Of course he's a failure before Kato, but even to begin mastering the flight of the Thunder God it should be enough, but this is just the beginning. Kato himself is, as always, at his best, but there are no limits to perfection, it's worth honing more. Intangibility, the approximate limit is about 20 minutes, in almost perfect condition. In general, on one of these days, I seriously thought, after 2 weeks of being here, I'll need to somehow visit the mainland and see my sister, I thought. I have quite a lot of things to do in Konoha, but according to her, I couldn't give an unambiguous verdict yet. I'm still too weak for that. Also, when sorting knowledge, I subtracted from the repository and found out that in our clan incest was not something vicious, but it was not a rule either, just a fact. Often, everything was fine, even among half-breeds, but if the blood was in a more distant generation, then typical problems could appear, and the further, the greater the chance, I remembered. If I were a purebred and my sister would be better, but ahem. I'm not really, or rather not at all talking about this, but that's still the same. I was already going into the wrong jungle. So, what we have is to visit my little sister, give her gifts, money from Nukanins, gifts, all sorts of things and copies of books with scrolls, and also do a couple of things in Konoha. The first is to break into the vault and steal the scroll of Flight of the Thunder God and possibly something else, replacing them using the symbol copying technique, but copying it incorrectly, I thought gloatingly. Serves them right, they won't be worthy of the knowledge of our clan, and in general, I thought, but decided not to go any further. And second, this is necessary. I didn't have time to think about it when I heard a familiar sound. Kamui, look who's brought here. It's Mr. I'm an idiot. I thought sarcastically. The named character almost fell over as he appeared, apparently from chakra exhaustion. Crouching slightly, he looked at me and, catching his breath, asked, "What ass are you hiding in?" Asked this seemingly half-dying hedgehog. You know, I'll ask you more politely about the homeland of my clan and Kushina's clan, I snapped in all seriousness. I wasn't laughing. At first he didn't understand, but then even from under the mask he was wearing, you could see just an overly dilated pupil. However, he's on time. By the way, I have a couple of requests for him. And questions, I thought. Yuzushio, literally, laying to the bottom, he has already stood up, shaking himself off at the same time. To the point, Obito, I have my fill of things to do. By the way, I have a couple for you too. I answered him. He slightly fell into tears from such a tone and treatment, which I had not shown him before. "Ah, it's you, I'm sorry, please," I said that I couldn't, or what happened? He asked without understanding and at the same time apologizing. I shook my head, becoming a little calmer. It doesn't matter, it's a long story, essentially connected with the clan, more important than what you wanted? I asked him. Well, to check on you, a little of what I could bring. He pulled out some things from the seal on his hand, there were even medicines there too. I see, thank you, but it's not worth it. I've been on my feet for a long time, more than a week, but thanks for the goodies. I think I'll give it to my sister, I said, taking these items from him. So, what happened? Still, he insisted on his own, although not directly. I sighed. I didn't want to explain anything, so I decided to give the scroll away, at the same time speaking. When I arrived here, I settled in the only more or less surviving building, a closer city, western. In general, there I found some things and clues to the location of one storage facility, which ended up in Toyosai, where we are now, and yes, it turned out to be not plundered. The system there is too sophisticated. In general, I took a lot from there and something really, finished me off. He listened to the short report, and then nodded, apparently understanding something, and began to read the scrolls. After a couple of minutes, one could see the stunned Uchiha, even to the revival of Madara. Apparently, if it happens now, he will not react in any way. It's simple, terrible, incredible. How simple, I can't wrap my head around it, he muttered to himself. A few minutes later, when he walked away a little, he suddenly jumped up. Stop, that is, Kushina-san and now you. He didn't have time to finish before I interrupted. Yes, we are the last heirs of the ideas and the will of life, the whirlpool. I finished for him more voluminously. This could have gone on longer, but I had other plans. Obito, I called him. He realized that I was serious and looked at me. Yes, Naruto, what did you want? He asked me, in the same tone. I have a couple of questions for you, as I said, and one additional, may I? I asked him the question again. Of course, what kind of confusion do you have? He looked around and found somewhere to sit, apparently, sat down on my temporary bed, voila, okay. In general, there are a couple of questions and both are related to Konoha, but one, separately, with Madara, I answered. It's good that he was sitting, otherwise he would have fallen right there, you should have seen it. Okay, let's get to the point, shall we? He asked slightly gloomily, not his favorite topic, however, I understand. In general, the first thing was on our birthday. Did someone give a tip to the place where this should happen? Secondly, Itachi clearly could not slaughter the entire clan himself, despite all his qualities. This is unrealistic. Someone helped. I know about Danzo, but I'm not sure who helped with the execution. And lastly, whose Rinnegan does Nagato have? Are they Madara? And how did he get them? I dumped everything on him at once. From these questions he again fell into a stupor, his face turned pale, green, red, from anger, but not at me, that's for sure. As I said earlier, I don't blame you for anything and I forgave you a long time ago, sister. If she finds out about you, she will forgive you too, and quite quickly. She's kind, but fair, I concluded. I need this for clarification and for personal purposes, plus the latter, perhaps it can make me stronger. Obito sat and thought, more calmly. I was already thinking of calling out to him, when he spoke. First, yes, it was Shimura Danzo. He gave away the location. I was under seal then and could not clearly control the actions. I just saw everything through a prism, he explained. Clearly, it means that someone is clearly playing the leader. Sooner or later, he will pay for everything, but revenge is a dish that is served cold. The Uchihas, Minato and Kushina and our clan, he thinks too much of himself. Just like my clan, I massacred with the help of Itachi. I will never forget this. He completely drooped. I walked up and put my hand on his shoulder, even though he is actually no one to me. But still at least a friend, yes, I can call him that. After a while he calmed down and continued. And the eyes, yes, I didn't mention, but they were transplanted into him, their true owner, Madara, you noticed correctly, and he got them by seemingly sewing a piece of Hashirama's flesh into himself, that is, his cells, but he awakened him, only in his old age, as I remember, he finished. Interesting, so I was right, however, it was logical, then the picture is more or less in order. There are also a couple of ideas on the Rinnegan, but that's for later, I thought. How did you know whose it was? I definitely didn't say that, he asked. A couple of facts about who you're playing, who ahem. Trained, you and why, well, in fact, it was just an assumption, with a couple of facts on top, I answered vaguely. I see, okay, in fact, I don't have much time, at most I have a few hours. What else did you find interesting? He asked me. Well, I don't have any reasons not to trust him, so I think it's worth showing something. I thought about this. Okay, mister, I'm not interested, but I won't show it, I answered in his style and went to the table with a proud nose. This individual even managed to get offended, but realizing that no one would play his games, he hurried after me. 2 hours later. That's what I understand, but still this does not justify those who attacked. He said my previous words out loud. I said the same thing, however, it doesn't matter anymore, I said. I have one request. I looked at him with interest. He accepted this look and now also waited, but for now I will tell my thoughts. Well, so, I would really like a sparring session, and one that would allow me to dance, I said, with a possibly creepy grin, clearly not visible from the outside. But this was enough for Obito. He was overcome, but nodding at something, he disappeared into the kamui. Feeling it nearby at that very training ground, I was transported to the mark on it. "Well, sparring for sparring or all?" he asked. "Go all out, don't hold back," I echoed him. The battle began. Obito was the first to move. He took out a tanto and a kunai from the seal, jerking towards the hero. Naruto at the last moment took out his kunai and ducked to the side. A close fight began. Here Obito was in the lead. Naruto tried to parry the blows, but clearly he had no place to study kenjutsu. Straining the Rinnegan as much as possible, at the right moment, he grabbed his kunai from the battle, replacing it with it. He found himself close to Obito. Having imbued himself with chakra, he grabbed Obito with a jerk and managed to hit him with a swing on the bridge of his nose. From such a blow, he even flew off without having time to become intangible, but landed on his feet. His mask was broken, its top and one eye were visible, the second was hidden in its shadow and glowed red. "Good reception, even unexpected, apparently a feature of your Rinnegan?" he asked, wiping the blood from the shrapnel on his face. I didn't answer anything. I just grabbed the kunai more comfortably and began to wait for the attack. It didn't take long to come. Obito squeezed his right hand, concentrating a whole clot of chakra there, and with lightning speed he applied it to the ground. It spread out into several pale shoots, similar to tree branches. To beat your Madara into the stump, Mokutan, however, in almost 20 years, and even with such intensity, he could well master it with his cells, I thought. But they did not achieve their goal. I threw a kunai with a movement seal in anticipation. Well, even though in battle it's worth a try, maybe with Hiration it will be easier in the future, I thought before moving forward. Obito simply couldn't believe his eyes, and this played a cruel joke on him. While still in the air, I quickly made a series of seals and blew out a wall of blue fire in front of me. My opponent just got up. When he saw what was approaching him, he barely had time to use intangibility. Meanwhile, I flew into him from my foot. He just let go of it, passing fire through himself. When a blow charged with chakra flew into his body. Just past one hand with a tanto and the other empty. He rolled head over heels from tens of meters, getting up again, all shabby and his clothes slightly damaged. He didn't have a tanto, it flew off somewhere to the side. Now apparently it's a fight without iron. Ha, a tricky trick, but you also took a risk. You could try your own fire on yourself, but I like it. He said with an anticipatory grin that it was a grin. I understood from the corners of his lips that were visible from under the edge of the broken mask. At such a distance, everything was clear. I decided to use Kato, but Obito too, which surprised me. The walls touched. Obito's wall was larger, but Naruto's was denser, and a struggle began. It didn't last long. Naruto's wall won with relative ease, but at that moment, Naruto hears the sound of a replacement and turns around as a blow almost lands on him, but he uses intangibility. Obito, in turn, again imposes taijutsu, because he is a pro at it, unlike Naruto. The latter, with all his might, held Obito's pressure, but he did not give up, trying to get him, sometimes making half-seals with the help of his second, parried attack, a limb. Yes, I like it. Finally, I can go all out, otherwise I might go crazy again, I thought joyfully. But then, Obito finds a gap, and with the help of his Mokutan-covered hand, he breaks through it. Naruto coughed up a blood clot. His opponent thinks that he has already won, but then Naruto, with the help of his free hand, completes the half-seal. Obito only noticed this now. Gotcha, Naruto said. Raiden's element completely enveloped his hand. At the moment it was replaced by a kunai, behind him and pierced his liver. 1-1. I gave the verdict, looking at the dumbfounded Obito. Do you understand that this is not how they fight? He asked confused, but already holding his side. That's just how they fight, not for life but to death. Sometimes there is nothing better than dance, I shouted again, rushing at him. Obito was still hit by a strong right-on discharge, its charge traveling through his body, disrupting the functioning of his nervous system and the coordination of chakra circulation and movements. At the moment, Naruto is nearby, and again imposes close combat. Obito holds on with all his might, but he already gives in. Several times he receives blows to the body, 2 to the wound, 1 to the head. Everything except the head is charged with chakra. In a minor break between taijutsu, he created shadow clones. A minute later, Obito was able to give a clear rebuff and jump away from the enemy, but very battered. Several clones went on the attack. Obito created his own. Apparently the finale is approaching. Naruto rushed at him, he at Naruto. The clones tried to provide an advantage but in vain. Techniques: Naruto jumps back, Obito makes a feint lunge and, after passing through intangibility, bends his arm and hits the neck. Naruto's coordination is impaired, now he grabs in taijutsu. A few minutes later, Obito was already thinking about ending the fight. "You lost," Obito said. "Yeah?" echoed the rumpled Naruto. At this moment, with the help of Amenotajakura, he changes into a clone that appeared behind Obito. The same one wanted to pierce Naruto, but instead dispelled his clone. He forgot that there were one more clones, and now it became a fatal mistake. What the he didn't have time to notice how he was led, he didn't see the actions of his eyes. When a kunai hit him from behind, he turned around. Let's consider it a draw. It was a good fight. If you fought with all your might at once, I most likely would have lost. I agree, it's a draw, and yes, it's a good fight, but what should we do about the damage now? Indeed, Obito was almost in Naruto's state after his second encounter with the root. Naruto himself was in a fresher state. "Come on, sit down, now everything will be fine," Naruto said, calling the clones. 30 minutes later. "Phew, I put these seals on him and myself. In an hour or two, it will be much better, and tomorrow I can be like a cucumber. I can do it today too," I thought. Forgive Obito that this happened, it's just, well, how can I say, I tried to justify myself. Come on, I understand everything, but the fact that you learned such a thing is commendable and extremely useful. It will come in handy in the future. He nodded to his speech. "By the way, can I borrow some equipment from you later?" "Well, just for personal use," he asked. I didn't feel any hidden meaning or thirst for profit from him or in his tone, just interest. Okay, we'll figure it out later, now there's enough to do without it, I answered him. Yeah, that's for sure, he agreed with me. By the way, what are you going to do? Do you have any plans? He asked me. I thought, on the one hand, there is no point in telling him, on the other hand, he is still on my side, so hiding this is stupid. Yes, there are a couple of ideas and they all come down to Konoha, no matter how absurd it may sound, I answered without going into details. I hope not because of all the new, and old information, he asked a little, alarmed. No, not yet, on other matters, but why is this so important to you? I asked. He didn't answer anything, just stared at the floor. After a few seconds, nodding to something, he answered me. You know, there are several reasons, although I myself would, but it's just, you still tell me, like, my brother has become narrower, probably, but that's how it is. I'm not sure but, he couldn't put it all together. Shaking his head and with a serious expression on his face, he continued more clearly. In general, this will not lead to good, revenge, such as this, will only destroy you and your personality thoroughly, leaving nothing after it, even though its moment will be sweet, he answered logically. I didn't have such direct plans and this was not my goal, however, if this is a byproduct of them, I will only be glad. No. I have completely different goals, and, especially in Konoha, I didn't want to tell him meticulously about this, but still, you never know. Will you dedicate it? Of course, I understand that I'm probably unworthy if that's the case, but at least I'm glad that you didn't choose. He didn't have time to finish. Are you sure you want to know this? This is confidential information, in fact, and I'm not sure that I have the right to disseminate it. Okay, he even became a little sad. Having weighed everything, I decided that for now it's not worth talking about it at all. Firstly, when I figure it out myself, then we'll see in general, and secondly, if this happens, then when Naruko herself decides that it's possible and decides not to hide it. Sorry, maybe later, especially when the second person to whom this concerns will not mind revealing it, I said vaguely. I understand, you never know, even if it's not about me, it's about the situation, he nodded in understanding. That's right, here you are right, in the situation, thank you. So, in any case, I have a couple of things to do there. The first is to visit my sister, and bring her all sorts of things, and the second, to pick up something from the storage Konoha belongs to us. Plus, maybe something else, but it's too early to talk about that, but yes, and as for revenge, if they themselves get in the way, it's their problem. If my plan leads to it, anyway, which one, physical or moral, is also a plus. But the main thing is the goal, not revenge, and that is not the goal. I finished the tirade. Obito thought and nodded at this definition, apparently approving of it. I see, well, let's see what you were talking about there, about interesting things. He changed the topic. Yeah, right, I'll get that book now, I said, printing it out from my wrist. With various things to do, the day later came to an end. The next day, I decided that tomorrow I would go to Konoha. Okay, come on, I have to go to the organization, I'm already late, I'll have to come up with a story about where I was and who I fought with, he said, laughing a little. Many of his wounds have already healed. But his clothes and mask, of course, are in a landfill. However, he replaced them and threw out the old ones. Well, come on, then, if anything happens, I'll give a signal to the press, or myself, let me know how it is, I told him. Yesterday, after all, I put a stamp on it too, just in case it might come in handy. Okay, see you soon, brother, he said quietly, disappearing into the kamui, but I heard him. See you soon, Obito, maybe, we will become them one day, I said into the void. So, it's time to prepare for the trip to Konoha, and then to the world of summoning. Today, the day promises to be interesting. You will have to run, you will get screwed, I thought, a sensible thought, starting my new day. A new day has come, the day of the trip to the west. Yesterday I packed all my things and was ready. Well, it's time to hit the road. I'll try to transport myself to the cave, and then we'll see, I thought. After concentrating for a couple of minutes, I tried to feel my mark in that direction. But it didn't work out. After a few more it did. Apparently it will be difficult. Well, we'll get through it, I finally thought. Having transported myself, I fell on my knee. It was extremely difficult, like that, and even with such a seal. Having come to my senses a little, I stood up and looked around. Everything was the same, but it was clear that they were there. Apparently Konakov's. I'll throw on a henge before it's too late, I thought sensibly. A second later, I decided to look around outside, but when I approached the exit, I almost fell into the floor. I stopped so abruptly. A signal, Fuan? Are you completely? However, I won't take it off, otherwise they might find out that I own it, but I don't need it yet, I decided. Concentrating on the nearest seal outside the cave, I was transported to it. Finding himself again in a different place, he looked around again and scanned the area. It's empty, it's clear, and it's good, we can take a break, I thought as I sat down on a branch. So, what we have means Konoha. We need 3 things there, I began. The first is to visit Naruko and everything connected with it. The second is to break into the storage room and steal some things, replacing. The third is to penetrate the Uchiha territory, I isolated. Still, I have one theory, out of several, related to the Sharingan, and not only its origin, but also possibly its development. If this turns out to be true, then knowledge about its techniques may be useful to me, I noted. If I'm right, then perhaps, at a minimum, I will be able to create Susanoo, and maybe some other Sharingan techniques. I continued my thought process. Indra, the son of the sage and the founder of the Uchiha, he was the first to have a Sharingan. Ashura is unknown, but since the Uzumaki and Senju came from him, then most likely we have something in terms of bodily strength. They have spiritual, I continued. Because, perhaps, I will need a piece of Uchiha flesh and then maybe everything will work, but how? I don't know yet. I think there are only 3 of them, I thought. The point is, the sage had a Rinnegan and something else on his forehead, but as I understand it, this is not a full-fledged Jujutsu. His son has a Sharingan, which means, at a minimum, the Sharingan itself in the form that it exists came from the Rinnegan. I decided. But, I have a problem with him, even though Hagoromo awakened him to me, that is, unlike the leader of the Akatsuki, there is no one, Nagato, he is my own by genes, but still, when using him, I feel that the strength is not all and that he is inferior. I was thinking about this whole situation. Perhaps, the Rinnegan is the next stage of the Sharingan, however, we'll see. I finished. The plans now for the future with him are as follows. The first is to get a piece of Uchiha flesh. The second is to create some kind of seal for its synthesis with my cells, without absorption. The third is to get the Sharingan. However, will I transplant it or no? This is a question. Maybe it's worth leaving as a backup option. For the future, I thought about it. I don't want to be Madara and wait until I'm old until something happens somewhere, and even then, it's not a fact that with his approach anything will change for me. I need a tougher option. I finished. Okay, everything is clear, except for the flesh. However, we'll figure it out. It's time to hit the road, I decided. Getting up and brushing myself off, I headed on the road, to the northwest, to Konoha. 2 days later. And here you are. I haven't seen you for 4 years and I wouldn't want it any less. I thought sarcastically, looking at the gate in the distance. I was already approaching the gate when I noticed some eternal guards standing at them. They happened to be here since the time of Hashirama. Haven't they been standing here? Well, I have vague suspicions about this, I thought slightly ironically. Approaching the distance of an extended kick, they just noticed me. However, nothing new, as expected, I remarked again, not without irony. Meanwhile, they deigned to raise their voices. Wait, who are you and for what purpose did you come to Konoha? He began his, interrogation. Wave. Kurome, from the land of waterfall. The reason is banal. I'm traveling around countries. I decided to start with the land of fire. I answered as casually as possible. I see. Now we'll fill out the documents for you and take a chakra imprint, okay? You have it, right? They asked me. Yes, okay, I don't mind, I understand everything, I answered calmly. I used chakra, not quite my own. Firstly, a filter. Secondly, the imprint of one citizen, may he rest in peace. Imprint removed and checked, apparently nothing was found. They issued me a pass and told me to visit the residence. Nodding and saying goodbye, I set off. My henge was interesting. If I had an uncle, along the Minato line, he would have looked approximately the same in my years. However, apparently I'm not the only one who thinks so. Many people look askance at me. However, I look more like Minato only in my hair, and that's all, but my appearance is still quite pretty. Pretending that I was looking at the village and its inhabitants, I walked into the residence, waving my hands this way and that. There's no point in standing out. On the way, I noticed her. She was not walking alone. Next to her was Pink and Ashy. Good afternoon, dear ones, I answered as I walked, nodding slightly. Sakura, on the other hand, slightly hung up at my appearance, but Kakashi responded with a nod, while Naruko was in a state of, I don't care, suddenly perked up, but I walked past without looking back. There's no need to give reason for suspicion, after all, there are ears everywhere. Having calmly reached the residence, I went inside. As if I didn't demolish it, it's the same trash, absolutely, I concluded. With these thoughts in mind, I already reached the reception desk. They stopped me there, but after a couple of minutes they let me through. I knocked and received an answer and went in. Inside, everything was as it was then, even the portraits were the same. I looked sideways at Minato, asking the painting, "Are you happy?" However, that's not the point. Tsunade raised her gaze and looked at me. At first she didn't understand anything, but after looking closer, she calmed down, but whispered, "Well, I need to drink less. I already see Minato in everyone I meet," she stammered. "My name is Wave Kurome, I'm from Waterfall Village, I came for the same thing as many, but everything is described here." I handed her the pass from the gate. She took it and read it, looking at me, nodded and said, "So, everything seems to be in order. How long do you plan to stay?" she asked. I thought for a minute and said, "I think 2 weeks to see and try everything here. The cuisine is interesting and, in general, remarkable establishments. I think this will be enough at the same time to take a break from the road," I answered. She thought for a minute, looking at the form and at me, but then she signed it and stamped it, putting it aside. "Okay, you can go. If anything happens, there is a set of rules on the registration table, a base for tourists. If you have any questions, please contact me," she finished. "I'm very grateful to Tsunade-sama, see you soon," I said in a bow. She was even apparently surprised. It is not so often that she is called by her name and not by her title. However, without allowing the conversation to continue, I left the residence. I was walking in thought. I was wondering where to go, and I met some shinobi along the way. "Excuse me, dear, can you tell me where a visitor can have a bite to eat in a decent establishment?" I asked. "Oh, yes, of course, look, behind that block, after 3 turns to the right there will be a barbecue bar, don't miss a very good one, I recommend it," he answered with enthusiasm. "I see, thank you very much, have a nice day." Slightly putting on a smile, I answered with a half bow, turning towards the establishment. No, I already knew where to go, but it would be very suspicious, and I need to not get burned, so I'll have to do this. However, it will be easier later, I thought. I went to the restaurant. When I entered I sat down at an empty seat and waited for the waiter. After an hour, having finished the meal and paid, I asked where I could spend the night and they gave me an address, even 2, however, it's good, one is close to Naruko's house. Nodding and thanking me, giving a tip, I went out, breathing in the air, I thought. The air here is good, unlike the population, I thought with nostalgia. After stretching a little, I went to the address, at the same time asking along the way where he was, who knows. In general, having arrived and checking with the public whether I was in the right place, I booked a room here. And I decided to walk around the area. By the way, there is a training ground nearby, in the evening people train there, maybe go there. As if by chance, wandering and exploring the area, I came out there. And when I got there, I noticed that it was almost empty. There was only my sister. However, this is good, the main thing is not intrusive, after all, the eyes are nearby. Having looked around the training ground for the sake of appearance, I noted an empty space, and went there doing a warm-up. Calling it a workout would be nonsense. Sometimes I glanced at her, but tried not to get closer. Nevertheless, it was nice to see her, beautiful. Having finished with this matter, I was about to leave. After all, it was evening outside, and I was not at home. Having decided to leave, I heard something behind me. "Stop, although I'm not sure that you're not an enemy, but you're very suspicious, take off your henge," she ordered. Oh, wow, she even realized that I was under it. Well done sis, you're growing up, I thought with a smile, and after scanning the nearby area, I didn't find anyone. But we need to act quickly, a strong release of chakra will be immediately detected, and we don't need that. Having thought it over and coming up with a plan of action, I began quickly. At the moment I turned my head, feeding chakra into the Rinnegan, I am replaced with her weapon and push it away with a half-turn. She doesn't have time to do anything, and I put up a barrier, the simplest one, masking and chakra suppressing. Well done, little sister, you figured me out. However, I myself wouldn't want to hide from you, I said, taking off my henge. End POV Naruto. POV Naruko. That guy is strange, something is wrong with him, too suspicious, I thought. RRRR, there is something, his chakra is not quite his, as if it is filtered with someone else's caste and henge, but something strange, he concluded. You'll need to be more careful, you never know, I thought. For the first time I agree with you, little thing, although he has no negative emotions, only some mixed ones, but this does not change anything. Kurama concluded. Having decided on that, I continued the training. After a few tens of minutes, he came and went to the end of the training ground, doing exercises. He's clearly watching you. But I don't understand anything at all, he only has positive emotions, strange, he finished. I see, we'll see when he leaves, if anything happens, we can twist it, I answered. A couple of hours later, he wanted to leave the training ground, that's my way out. Stand, although I'm not sure that you are not an enemy, but you are very suspicious, take off the henge. I ordered. He stood there for a couple of seconds, then smiled, turning his head. I was even a little taken aback. Then he suddenly appeared next to me, and pushed me away. I didn't understand anything, I was about to make the seals, but he put that's a barrier. It can't be, barriers, it's, strange. Naruko, be careful, I don't know he didn't have time to finish, the stranger answered. Well done, little sister, you figured me out, however, I myself wouldn't want to hide from you, he said, taking off his henge. Sis? What, in CM? Bureaucratic? I only had time to think. As he took off the henge, he, my brother and my love, stood in front of me, tall with glowing multicolored eyes. Bureaucratic, I was the only one who could say it. That's right, you'll forgive me for such a reception, but you yourself understand differently. He didn't have time to finish, I jerked myself next to him and embraced him. He is so warm and close, it brought tears to my eyes, I haven't been with him for so long. He just hugged me and began stroking me on the back, without letting go, that's what I needed. Well, honey, don't cry, everything is fine, and I also brought gifts and, I missed you too, he said in response, pouting slightly. This even made me giggle a little, I don't remember how long it's been since I felt this good. So, since you can't walk, then I'll carry you, I put a mark at your house, my brother told me. I didn't understand anything when he took me in his arms and in an instant we moved. He fell to his knees, I was thinking of panicking, when suddenly he began to concentrate chakra. Without saying a word, he instantly accumulated a clot of chakra and, forming a series of seals with his hands, slammed his hands on the ground, never letting go of me. That's better, I hope I made it in time, and now there won't be any problems, he said, getting up from his knees with me in his arms. Well, will you just lie in my arms? Or will you let your brother into the house? He asked sarcastically. I, however, understood the full meaning of his words and blushed, still unable to take any action. Fahaha, little one, he's just joking with you, and here you are breaking the comedy. Naturally, this rug was also being bullied. Having come to my senses a little and getting off his hands, I let him into the house. I was so glad that I just skipped everything, turn on a light here, put something away here, put something there. He just stood and looked at me from the side, smiling at something of his own. I was about to start a conversation at the table, when he interrupted. Stop, no need for ramen. I have nothing against him, and I won't, but I have some alternative, he said, taking out a scroll from nowhere. What is this? I asked, not understanding this action. A little thing, don't you understand yet? barriers, movement seal, sealing technique, he began to list this rug. You want to say this is Fuan? But where, and how? And the seal, is this, Hirayushin? I couldn't understand. RRR, sometimes you really are so stupid, how do I know? But no, it's clearly not Hirayushin, and in general, ask him, this fur coat answered, breaking the communication channel. I didn't even have time to utter a word before he said it. Later, everything later, and now, let's go to the table. He said, opening a few more scrolls and taking out from them, rolls and dishes. After an hour. Having eaten normally, we sat down on the sofa, I settled down on his lap, he didn't mind, he took my hair and ran it through his fingers, with one hand and the other, stroking my head. I wish this could last forever, I'm so lonely often, and he's only risking himself. What if, I again imagined that picture, 4 years ago, and cried. Well, what are you, that's enough, I told you that the sun doesn't cry, or are you not the sun? He asked slightly challengingly, raising an eyebrow. Smiling through the onslaught of grief, I perked up and was able to answer. No. Or yes, I don't know. It's just. I'm so afraid of losing you again that I can't. I don't know what to do, maybe I should even leave with you if you, of course want to, I said, turning away. He didn't say anything, he just picked me up and sat me down hugging me, leaning against the back of my head and kissing it. You know. I would like this too, but for now, it's dangerous with me, you'll be better off here, however, I'll be here for now, but just passing through. I need to go to the world of summoning, answered I. I thought about it, and indeed, such power would be useful for my brother. Okay, I answered, having calmed down. And then, we can live together? I asked with hope and without hidden meaning. Well, you know, only if you want it and are safe, he answered. Yes, 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 thank you, thank you, thank you. I jumped for joy, leaning on him. He didn't answer and just patted me on the head. Some time later. Brother, where have you been? I asked. Sooner or later I would have to say. I was in the homeland of our clan. Uzushio, he said as he snapped. Mom's homeland? Is it true? Have you been there? Is it beautiful there? Will we go there? And what is there? I can ask a lot of questions at such a moment, sometimes it seems that this trait comes from my parents. He raised his hands in reconciliation, stopping all subsequent questions. Stop. Yes, I was. And yes, it's beautiful there in its own way. Maybe we'll go, but then. But that's not the main thing, he answered vaguely, while closing all my questions. In general, when I was there, I did a little exploring of the territory, and found some clues on the storage facility. Which turned out to be in another city, and yes, there are several of them there, but they all couldn't find Uzushio and logically, they didn't plunder him. He finished the short story, pausing before continuing. So, there was a lot of stuff on the island itself and in the storage room, the same stuff, but that's not the point, more on that later. I think it's worth starting with something else, he answered, opening one scroll. Without saying anything, he handed it to me. My descendant, I hope that you will read this, but if this happens, then Uzushio has fallen, the first lines of the text began. Whose records are these? Some Uzumaki? Maybe even the head of the clan, incredible, I thought sadly. This is the end, but if so, I still hope you will be the ancestor of my daughter, I hope she is alive, I'm sorry Kushina that I can't be with you, if this message still reaches you. Did, our grandfather, right? Tears were coming to me again. Naruto hugged me tightly, stroking and calming me, having gathered my strength, I continued to read through myself. My name is Seishi Uzumaki, I apologize for not introducing myself earlier, I don't have time to think clearly, I am the youngest son of Ashina Uzumaki, apparently the last Yuzukage of the whirlpool. So, my brother and I are the last heirs? And Mito, who are we? I thought. Yes, Mito is my older sister. I hope that she is your grandmother, if you thought about it, but I almost didn't see her, and in general, about her condition in lately, nothing is known and it's strange. Chan Mito? Wait, so Ba-chan, auntie? I asked in amazement. Brother, does this work out? Ba-chan is our aunt? I asked. Because of this, he apparently fell into the astral plane, not understanding the essence of the question. And Ba-chan, who is this? He asked without understanding. Oh, sorry, this is Tsunade-san or Hokage, I explained. He was a little hung up on this, maybe he didn't think about it. Sometimes it happens. Yes. I guess, that's true, he answered. I continued to read the message through time. What I wanted to say, forgive me, my descendants, is that you are left here, without us. I would really like to be with you, to see your first steps, to encourage my daughter, and in the end, to personally lead her down the aisle. And so that we could live as a family, as we had since childhood, with the exception of Mito, she decided to sacrifice herself for the good of the clan, stupid older sister. Mom, Dad, I would really like it too. And my brother often said so much about his stupid sister, apparently it is so, I thought with sadness. Know that your great-grandfather loves you too, although he is angry at times and strict, but he is kind, he doted on your mother, he always sat with her when he was not involved in the affairs of the clan. We love you very much, no less than your mother and grandmother, Ami Uzumaki. She is also an amazing woman. Oh, how I would like to be with you, but it's not fate. Forgive us for everything and take care of your mother. You have her alone, like probably my father. We have always had a family. The most important thing is live happily. I couldn't stand it. I started to get hysterical, but my brother grabbed me tightly and didn't let go. After some time, I calmed down and read the rest. Br. Attic, that is, Konoha and Danzo, I didn't finish, but he understood me. Yes, although not quite Konoha, however, no one here lifted a finger, and it's unlikely that they would. But yes, Danzo will still pay for everything, but not now, it's too early, but others may too. If they get in the way, he answered vaguely. On the one hand, I really wanted it to be like this, on the other hand, it's bad to take someone's life, even though he made a lot of mistakes, but it's still not for me to judge my brother. I just pressed myself tightly into him, to which he did not respond, only hugging me tighter. With one hand I noticed that he created a clone, and after nodding at something, he disappeared, but not in the smoke. Where is he? I asked my brother. Play the role of me. I'm, a tourist, he said with irony. It even made me smile. After all, my brother is with me and everything will be fine, and he is right. Sooner or later, everyone will be rewarded for their deeds, in the next world or in this. With such thoughts, I fell asleep in his arms. End POV Naruko. Naruto's POV. Little sister, I don't know what, but I definitely won't let you go and won't leave you alone. Everything will be fine. Sleep well, stupid big sister, I thought as I kissed her forehead. Where is the bed? I haven't been here for a long time. Taking her in my arms, I carried her to her. Having reached there, I carefully laid her down, covering her with a blanket, straightening her hair. And what's that? I picked up the photo frame next to it on the floor. It showed a gloomy me and a cheerful sister, holding and stretching my face in the photo, saying, "Smile." Judging by the frame and its cleanliness, she often holds it in her hands and looks after it. Apparently I really am so important to her, I thought. I don't know, sister, I don't know. I want to say, maybe. I'll figure it out soon and decide, we'll see. I mentally addressed her. I would really like, for you to be happy, sleep peacefully, and with the rest, we'll figure it out together, and with some things, I myself, when I'm ready, I finished. Taking a chair and placing it at the table, I took out a book and began to study new kanji patterns and their applications. So several hours passed until I fell asleep on this matter. I woke up, apparently not very early, but already in bed, and Naruko hugged me in her sleep. So, but from this place in more detail, how did this happen? I mentally tried to understand. What I remember is that I was sitting at night over a book, by the way, and I came up with an interesting idea, which even now will be very useful to me if it works. I began. Next, I passed out right on the table, and woke up already here. I finished. Since I was not noticed sleepwalking, and there are no other living creatures except cockroaches in the house, it turns out that she put me here. I completed the logical conclusion. Turning my head, I looked at her. She is cute enough when she sleeps. And when was the last time this happened? Probably at least 5 years ago, if not more, I thought. But we often went to bed like that. There was only one bed, and we had nothing to be ashamed of. With such thoughts, I didn't even notice how she woke up. And she's very cute, especially when she rubs her eyes like that. What are these feelings? They weren't there before, but where did they come from? I tried to understand. Let's figure it out. However, even yesterday was warmer than I expected at the peak of my fantasies, and in general, maybe I'm right, I thought. Without dragging out such thoughts in the morning, there is still plenty to do. I think it's time to get up. Well, son, good morning, and why did you, drag me into bed? I decided to have a little fun. Good morning. I don't know, it's just not comfortable to sleep there. Well, we were earlier, that, and I thought it was better for you to be here. She blushed, but still buried herself in me. You don't mind, do you? She asked slightly pitifully, still raising her gaze to me. Well, what can I say? It seems not, but somehow now everything is different, I thought. No. I don't mind, of course, only if you want it, sunshine, I said, patting her on the head. Because of this, she truly became like him. I haven't seen her so glowing for a long time. What will you do? Will you stay with me, and maybe teach me Fuina? She began her attack. Let's see, I think yes, I'll stay. I'll have to try to create something. However, if you want, you can watch, of course, and ask, I answered her. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's go for exercise and breakfast and get to work. This blonde hurricane jumped up, only the whirlwind remained behind her. Well, I agree, it's time to get down to business. It's still worth protecting the clone, especially if I become a regular here again. It seems that's how it will be, I thought, getting out of bed. 2 hours later. During the warm-up, we managed to tease each other several times. In a couple of situations, even I laughed purely and loudly. They just hugged me, which even made me feel warmer. Having finished with this, we went to breakfast. In general, nothing remarkable, but I didn't let her cook it. I took it myself and started cooking. Itachi would have clearly been jealous, and she just looked at me. However, this look was only warm. It was very nice. After breakfast, which was in fact almost lunch, we sat down at the table. So, look, and if something is not clear, speak up, but we won't have time for every symbol or kanji. By the way, I said, almost interrupting her once. Some of the books, not so, many of the books are in copies now, and I will leave them all to you, but I will seal them in your seal, so that no one except you can take them, I said. My sister was apparently more than happy and almost strangled me again in her arms. And she has strength, especially when she's emotional. However, that's good, but for some reason it seems that my heart began to beat faster. I barely had time to think. Pulling away from me, apparently she realized how strong it was and just smiled awkwardly. I just patted her on the top of the head. There's no point in making a mountain out of a molehill. Well, let's start from the beginning. So several hours passed, during which I even made up the basic design itself, for a test, because there was definitely no such thing before. Well, should someone create a seal to disperse chakra over its entire working surface? If people only have SEH and do not consist entirely of chakra? However, in Biju theory, such a seal, if modified, would be worth its weight in gold. As for my little sister, she was spinning back and forth and couldn't sit still. However, she often did not interrupt me, and even apparently analyzed and remembered something. I really wanted to move on to the practical part and perhaps create a seal like this. There was a knock on the door. My sister and I looked at each other and at one moment said, "Yours." A plan was drawn in my head instantly. Having quickly scanned the area, I discovered only one chakra, not strong, but you never know, and it's not worth the risk. Who knows why this someone came, but here I am. Naru, I called her. She even shuddered. We haven't used such an abbreviation for a very long time. She came up, and I put a seal on her isthmus. She restrained herself from screaming in surprise and good. "This is my seal. Whatever happens, everything is fine. Give me some chakra." "Well, there's a lot of it and I'll come," I said quickly, putting it on my seal, Henge. The moment I receive her nod, I am transported to my room. Why am I so worried? No, I understand, or, after all, was my assumption earlier correct? That's all I had time to think. End POV Naruto. POV Naruko. And who did this bring? They interfered with my brother and I just started to get used to the fact that he was nearby, and even from this, to receive happiness, I thought sadly as I approached the door. "Who's there?" I asked calmly but sadly. "Hello. Naruko-chan, it's me Shikamaru. This is the case, in general, won't you go with our team to the barbecue? Because I haven't seen you for a long time, at all," he asked from the doorway, but noticing my state even at the beginning of his speech, he began to stammer. No, thank you, I'm not eager, I have enough to do, I'm sorry," I answered him calmly but without emotion. He looked at me and only exhaled gloomily, accepting the answer. "I see, I understand, you don't have to talk, good luck then, if anything happens, it's still valid, come in while you can," he said goodbye. Closing the door, I waited until he disappeared from my sensory range. And I put the chakra into the seal, but nothing happened. Almost a minute passed and I began to worry. But then he appeared. I immediately jumped on him, because even in such an insignificant period of time, I managed to come up with all sorts of things. Be careful, otherwise you'll strangle him. How will you live then?" he asked sarcastically. "Sorry, it's just that you haven't shown up for a long time, and I'm afraid to be alone again," and, before I could finish, he cut me off. "And I didn't come up with anything for myself, right? As I said, don't be afraid, now I won't leave you, it's so easy, you won't get rid of me," he said and again patted me on the head. "This is probably the best day of my life, it's a pity I have to hide, but I'm very glad that my brother is back," I thought, melting under his touch. "So, well, let's get back to work, or what?" he asked. I just nodded and skipped off to the table. We continued working, and by the evening, after eating again and going to training, we were able to finish printing. End POV Naruto. POV Naruto. It seems ready, we should try the seal, can you create a clone? I turned to her. We stood on the training ground, which I had previously surrounded with seals, as inconspicuous and camouflaged as possible. She nodded and created a clone, and I approached him and began to apply a seal. The clone turned red and began to breathe irregularly. Ahem, okay, however, I applied the seal. However, even I felt a little awkward because I remembered that incident in Orochimaru's former hideout, and something else, not that I wanted to move away now, even, on the contrary, somehow. "Naruko, hit your clone so that it dissipates," I said as soon as I finished. Although she did it reluctantly, the clone simply flew away and fell, cursing, standing up and looking angrily at the original. "It actually hurts." "What are you doing?" "Absolutely. The clone answered her. Not bad, it works, I'll attach it to one of my own and let it play the role of a decoy, I said. Before there was an argument, or worse, between Naruko and her copy, I simply shut them both up and we continued training. Soon, having finished, we gathered back. Of course we were transported immediately, there was no need to light up again. Once at home, we decided to take a break and sat on the sofa. She again, like yesterday, settled down on my lap, and all I could do was finger her hair, so beautiful. What can I say? It seems that today I just started to experience new feelings. During training, when Shikamaru visited, as my little sister said, it was him. And in general, in the morning, we'll see what happens from this, I thought while stroking her on the head. I can't say that I loved her as much as she loved me, however, she and I always had a special relationship, unlike everyone else, everything is the same there, I recalled this. Because perhaps this led to what we have now, we'll wait and see if I'm right, but I feel that I'll find out soon, I finished this internal monologue. Naruko simply stroked my head, sometimes sliding down my cheek to my neck, and back. It was very pleasant, even soon I decided to lie down myself, then she got up and placed me on her lap, stroking and fingering my hair. Very nice, now I understand what she saw in it, and her hands are so warm, it started again, and a slight smile crept onto her face, I thought. She looked at me, looking up and down into my eyes, but later thought about it. Not wanting to distract her, I just enjoyed her company and this moment. A few minutes later, she finally said, "Brother, maybe there are still people like us left?" "Well, from our clan, well, it can't be that there's no one there," she said with sadness in her voice. I just sighed, but remembered one of them, on Sasuke's team. There's one. I met him recently, before I went to the bottom, on Sasuke's team, I answered vaguely. Is it true? Is it true? So we're not alone, and the girl? Uzumaki, and what is she like? And she, before she could finish speaking, I interrupted her. So, yes, she is a girl and red-headed, like all purebred Uzumaki, and which one is not exactly clear, but I think as a person she is interesting, I answered the attack that had not begun. Will we meet her? And with others? Maybe there, more? She asked. We'll see, but with her, perhaps, by the way, her name is Karen. I decided to tell her a little about that incident, and that's how our evening went. Before dinner, I created a clone, compacted it and checked it for suitability, and sent it on its way. Now, you don't have to worry about cover for a few days, the main thing is not to get yourself shot. We went to bed, I didn't really want to sleep, I had one thing that I wanted to do today, and early. But I don't want to leave my little sister until she falls asleep, so I'll wait. We lay down on the bed and she hugged me, very tenderly, looking into my eyes and kissed my forehead. I fell a little out of reality looking into her eyes, everything was there, gratitude and tenderness and trust and love, absolute. Sleep, calm down, little sister, everything will be fine, I will never leave you, I thought, moving away slightly from this and stroking her head. After a while she fell asleep, and after making sure of this, I decided to start business. So, we need to quickly get into the territory of the former Uchiha, ahem, not the most pleasant memories with this, from death to kurama, forgive me my friend, I thought sadly. Once on Uchiha territory and having scanned the area, I began moving deeper into the quarter. I need a Naka temple, it was located almost on the outskirts of the block, because to get to it, I would have to go through it all, I thought. Half an hour later, I was at its entrance, after looking around, I didn't find anything remarkable. Having gone inside, I tried to find the entrance to the dungeon. According to the descriptions in the documents, it was somewhere here, however, there is an option that I will not be able to get there, at least quietly, I concluded. After a couple of minutes, I found the entrance, but there I had to use the Sharingan. And here's the first lift, however, let's try it in our own way, I concluded. Having activated the Rinnegan, I stood in front of the well, looking into it. For a minute nothing happened, until a creak was heard, and then a crash, a shift of a massive object. As I thought, the Rinnegan is strongly connected with the Sharingan, even so, it was missed. Having gone downstairs, I looked around again. I noticed the tablet. Interesting, but I don't remember this. However, it's like something from an Uchiha family heirloom. It was, I concluded as I approached the stove. Having examined it, I did not find anything special, incomprehensible signs and squiggles that meant nothing. And what kind of game is this? Maybe the Sharingan is needed here? Then, maybe, I thought, again feeding chakra into the Rinnegan. And suddenly everything became clearer and the squiggles wove into letters and those into words. When it was all over and the text became clear, I read it. So, this is talking about the secrets of the Mangekyo Sharingan. It seems like that's what you need, right? I thought. After reading this line, I found nothing but isolated facts and designations. And here's a guide to purchasing it. It was somewhat interesting. Gaining strength through pain, mental, BRR, truly a clan, only I concluded. Further, they talked about the possibility of control over tailed animals, PF. Me too, new information. The warning about the eternal Tsukiyomi, however, it is somehow strange. It is clear that here nearby it turns into the fact that in fact this is the only road to peace. So, I barely noticed it. With the Sharingan, you probably won't even be able to tell it apart, especially if you don't pay attention. Someone obviously added it, I thought. Someone changed this tablet. The question is, when and who? This someone clearly must know Hagoromo and very well, because understanding this code encrypted in Dijitsu is strong. I finished the conclusion. From all this it turns out that someone wants to finish Kagaya's plan. The question is, why and who? Very interesting. That was all I could think. Also, there was some small information about the development of the Sharingan and some more detailed details of a couple of its general techniques. But I'll probably write this down, although it's not complete information, I thought. Having finished with the tablet and making a note to take it into account and find out more about this interesting addition to the message, I moved on. The temple itself was a small network of branching passages with several rooms and one hall. Most likely, meetings were held there before. Having examined all of them, I did not find anything remarkable, and what I found, I sealed. Having already gotten bored, I went to the hall. Maybe there was something there. Having created clones, I gave the order to comb everything here, which is what we did. An hour later, the results were found. Scrolls were found describing Susanoo and its capabilities and several individual ones, such as Amaterasu or Tsukuyomi. But this will come in handy for us, I thought, sealing them too. Having dispelled the clones, I headed back home. Still, you never know, you need to get some sleep. Having moved home, I quietly made my way to the bed. And he climbed into it, hugging his sister, but in the dream she clung to me and hugged me back. It was as if on a subconscious level she was drawn to me, like a plant to the sun, although it was more likely the other way around. I kissed her forehead again, straightening the curl hanging down her nose. Sleep well, Naruko, everything will be fine, sweet dreams. With such thoughts, I myself soon fell asleep. I woke up, unexpectedly. My sister woke me up, stroking my head. "Good morning, brother," she said cheerfully. "Good," I answered her slightly sleepily. "You know, maybe you can still teach me Fuina, otherwise what kind of Uzumaki am I if I don't know him?" she asked, a little embarrassed. She is very cute when she is embarrassed. However, I even fell in love with her. "Of course, if you want, why not?" I answered her. Because of this, she just jumped onto the bed, almost knocking me into it, shouting, "Well then, get up, sleepyhead and sloth, let's go. Great achievements await us." She began cheerfully. Having succumbed to this terrorist, I got up and we went to the morning procedures. Everything was repeated again, but this time, my jokes and her laughter. Sometimes they jokingly set up a chase, and sometimes they simply, argued about nonsense. Also, breakfast, this time I let her cook. It is unrealistic to resist her jujitsu, which is not there. However, previously I still knew how, although not always. Apparently, this is changing. A couple of hours later, we sat at the table again, but this time she was studying. So, look, this is it. I took the book. Your first textbook. Here are the basic kanji, their plexus and examples. To get acquainted, we'll start small, he said. Well, okay, then is it possible? She asked, pointing at her. Of course. I patted her on the head. You start. If anything is not clear, contact me, I told her. She nodded and diligently began to study this tome, and I took out one of the scrolls. Susanoo is the basic technique of all Uchiha Mangekyo. It is a reflection of the soul of the user. It is extremely difficult to master due to the instability of the vortex flows of chakra in Jujitsu and their control at the first stage. However, isolated cases are known when Susanoo was created above the completed skeletal form. I read it. So, this is all. How interesting, but can you be specific? I was indignant. Until I reached and read the following. Since Susanoo is a reflection of the Uchiha soul, it is worth understanding and mastering it yourself. However, to create it, you need to imagine the form of chakra surrounding the owner in a certain form, necessary for the form, for attack or defense, or adjacent, with a high level of mastery of Mangekyo, said this scroll. Well, the Uchihas are not Uchihas, we'll see about that later, but the rest is interesting, I thought. Continuing to study the scroll, Naruko's voice pulled me out of my thoughts and ideas. Brother, help me, brother, I don't understand here, she said with cat eyes. I walked up and looked at what was not clear to her. There was one seal made of a plexus of 3 kanji on a simple fline. Pointing to one element, I began to explain to her. So several hours passed. She left for training with the team. Still, you shouldn't stand out, but I stayed. And he continued to study the Uchiha scroll, and when he finished, he moved on to Fuin, but sometimes thoughts about her came to me. Because of them, sometimes I couldn't even concentrate. Not that such thoughts are everywhere, but they slip through very, very often. In the evening, she returned and we continued eating, and at the end of the day, we even moved on to some kind of practice. After several unsuccessful attempts and my tips, she succeeded, although not right away. She was so happy that she ran into me and either didn't notice or deliberately so that she kissed me on the lips. I involuntarily answered, even though it was my first kiss. Very nice. Why? Is it possible? I actually love her more than my sister, I thought. Naruko realized what she had done and with a flushed face wanted to run away, but I didn't let her. Simply pressing him to himself and patting the top of his head, he said. Everything is fine, nothing terrible happened, right? I asked her. She didn't understand anything, but nodded belatedly. I just smiled and kissed her forehead. Don't worry about the little things, son, everything is fine, I said. We sat down to rest. Naruko was still embarrassed, but she no longer portrayed a donkey crammed into a corner. After some time, we gathered our strength and continued our training. Evening came, we went home. Naruko was terribly exhausted. Unlike me, I spent almost the whole day studying the knowledge of the Uchiha, even when she was in training. In general, only she was very tired. Scanning the area, I didn't find anyone other than typical civilians. Taking her in my arms, I carried her into the house and carried her to the kitchen. Let me go, I can do it myself, she answered in a quiet and embarrassed tone. No, my beloved sister is tired and I have to take care of her, I said seriously, but I was acting like a fool. She just smiled and took me by the neck, saying, Well, carry me forward, my beloved brother. She accepted the challenge. I didn't react at all. which shocked her a little and continued on my way, but my soul still felt warmer, even from such mutual tomfoolery. After dinner, we lay in bed again. This time everything was different. Naruko was very tired. "Brother. I don't know, I just feel strange, like I'm afraid," she said. It's clear, perhaps I was nervous from what happened during the day. However, I thought about it a lot myself, but I don't have a single answer yet, not yet. "Everything is fine, I'm close, and with you, you don't mind, do you?" I asked with a smile, patting her head. "No. No, of course not," she answered with the same, but more dazzling, sunny smile, fighting sleep. "Don't resist, princess, everything will be fine, I'm nearby and you, sleep well," I said. She just said thank you and pecked me on the lips, again, before closing her eyelids. I remained in prostration and in my thoughts. However, it was not for long at all. My thoughts switched to something else, to the future. For training, for planning and generally for his vision, and often Naruko was there. Having finished my thoughts, I began to feel that sleep was overtaking me. Yielding to him, I fell asleep. Tomorrow there will be a new day and new events. The next day passed similarly. I didn't remember about the incident at night, and I didn't want to, but when I remembered it again, it became pleasant. Another such incident did not happen, but her presence nearby was enough for me. Everything immediately became better. During this day, I only honed what I knew and practiced what I learned. This day was also good. I repeated the Uchiha scrolls I read and even tried to apply it in practice. I also continued to improve my fuin and my genomes. With my sister, we had a lot of fun and smiles with tomfoolery. She didn't need to go anywhere today, because the whole day was just ours. Yes, and it flew by, almost unnoticed, but no less intense than the previous ones. That's how the day went. The next day, the news came out that Naruko was leaving with the team. For some reason I felt uneasy. I even wanted to go with her and voiced it, but she was against it. "I'm not small, and you're hiding, so train for now, secretly, and I'll be there soon, don't worry." In general, in the evening I couldn't find a place for myself. A lot of things fell out of my hands. I wanted her to be nearby. The day was bad and sad, but it was over. Already on the 5th day of my stay here, I realized one thing in the evening, although the whole day was spent on such thoughts. I have something to tell her. I hope she will be there soon. And this, I'll tell her, when she gets back. I hope everything will be fine and I just. Today, I didn't sleep well. It's the 2nd day since Naruko went on a mission. It seems like it's not far away, within the country, and the mission is purely for reconnaissance and, if possible, eliminating a couple of elements seen there, nothing serious. But, already like the 2nd day, I can't find a place for myself, due to a number of factors, from typical paranoia to the simplest. Still, I love her, very much, and it didn't come out of nowhere in 3 days, it was already in different forms, even when I was crazy, in my own way, but I realized it only now. I thought about this whole situation. Now, everything has fallen into place, and feelings, with different thoughts or ideas associated with it, respond differently, but not contradicting, which means it's true. I thought again. On the one hand, I'm an idiot, because I didn't realize this for so long and in general, considering everything, but that's why I'm a demon. However, little sister clearly doesn't think so. I smiled at my thoughts about this incident. I remembered one moment, a couple of days ago, during training. In the end, it came down to something funny, but initially the essence was different. But I remembered her reaction. "No, you are not a demon, you, my brother and the most important person for me, the only, dear person in my life," she said then. I remembered this and reproduce it every time. For some reason it helps, especially when the thirst for blood pulls me into battle, but still, this cannot be ruled out. If I remember Obito's words correctly, Madara behaved in approximately the same way, however, worse, but hardly more than me, to the point of death. I tried to distract myself. Sitting on a stone at the training ground with one leg thrown over a boulder, closer to the other, the right hand rested on the upper part of the thigh, while the left hand held onto its leg with its elbow. I myself was a little lost in thought and thought about everything, about Naruko, Hiraition, Susanoo and so on. I hope this is just paranoia, from anxiety about recognition, and not something else, this thought flew through my head. It was already late afternoon, the second day after she left for the mission. In a week I would have to leave the village. Having decided to occupy myself with training to take my mind off my thoughts, I still tuned in to Naruko's mark, which I had given her. You never know, if something suspicious suddenly happens, I'll be transported instantly and don't care. About an hour passed with this task. I didn't strain myself too much, mainly trying to master Susanoo, which was in no way possible for me, and simply doing physical exercises. But at one point, I began to feel wild streams of chakra flowing through that mark. Which could only mean one thing: there was clearly a battle going on and, apparently, not an ordinary one. With a jerk, dispelling the clones and removing the henge, I tuned in to the seal. Ouch. Will they feel it? In a few moments, having clearly felt contact with her, I concentrated and was transported. Finding myself next to her, I was from behind her. By the way, a difficult battle was clearly going on now. One wanted to attack her from behind. When I appeared because of the surprise, he did not have time to react clearly. Intercepting his hand, I slashed him in the neck with a jerk. Naruko sharply turns around and sees me. Her pupils dilate. I just tooted. At the moment, straining the Rinnegan and saying Aminota Jikara, because a hail of iron is flying at her, I change places with her and let it pass through me. Not now, we'll figure it out later, don't yawn to the left, I shout to her and to the others. After all, on the sidelines there were obviously Kakashi and Sai, perhaps Sakura. After all, I didn't see her. They apparently noticed me too, but they clearly couldn't do anything. Like here, one of the opponents shouted out, apparently to his own. Gee guys, this is Jigaku, Tu Chikage didn't report this to us, he said. I was overcome with anger. It's clear, most likely their target is a sister, at least as a Jinchuriki, at a maximum. I was gripped by a fierce rage. My chakra would clearly have darkened by many orders of magnitude. That's what the censor would have said, if it had been here. Turning my head to my sister, she was apparently terrified. I whispered with my lips, attack. She didn't understand, but apparently she only hesitated for a second and ran towards me. I, turning my head back, changed to one of them, hit the other with my hand, but he blocks. Next to him were three more. I don't know their strength level, but by age they were more like Jounins, approximately. A battle ensues. One is trying to defeat me in Kenjutsu and the other is making seals of the technique. The third is on the backup of the first. The technique flies out, fireball. I didn't do anything, but apparently the enemy understood this. Fun, be careful, he can about, but the third didn't have time to finish, and the second realized what a mistake he had made. Letting the technique pass through me, I take the first one out of the game. The second one just managed to jump away, when I changed to one of the kunai next to him. Without regrets or twinges of conscience, I rip his throat open, just like the very first one. Turning my head, I noticed that my little sister knocked out the one I replaced. Now the second one, he apparently wanted to run away, but you can't get away from me. I sharply fold the seals and blow out my ball. He rushes towards the enemy, but he doesn't see him, but as soon as he turns around, that's it. I look around, there are a few more enemies. I pick up a few pieces of iron and throw them at them and concentrate. Once, I change to one, I rip open the body and touch a number of arteries. 2, I change again, pierce the body and apparently the heart. All the iron fell, next to others. They apparently realized what had happened and began to run away from these objects. I got so angry that I decided to use one of my most powerful Kato techniques. Kato, Fire Hell. This technique is stronger than Fire Destruction, but still a rank. Having made 3 seals, I began to sharply blow out a huge stream of fire, which from the outside was probably extremely impressive. The distance was small, and the speed of the flame was considerable, but who managed to leave as a replacement, or jump away, and who did not. Then the battle was more measured, but fast and ended in about 10 minutes. Only after the battle was over could I calm down, when a hand fell on my shoulder. "Brother?" she asked, slightly alarmed. "I can't, I need to calm down." "Then we'll talk, goodbye," I answer without emotion, although everything inside is shrinking. Perhaps her empath will tell her this. Without saying anything else, I move back to our house and collapse exhausted. Such seals are clearly not worth misusing. We need to study Hiration, and even more so, she's safe for now. When she comes, we'll talk to her, I noted in my head. Having decided on that, I decided to rest, having first put a henge on the seal. A few hours later, closer to night, I had more or less recovered. Having created a clone, I decided to draw a rough plan of action. Okay, I can get into the storage room this way, but it will cause a lot of noise. I need a cast of chakra, but not an easy one. But who? I thought. For several minutes, I went through all the options and possible problems with them. Until I settled on one, and it dawned on me. Exactly, Tsunade can often go out for a drink. I heard about this Sannin, and lately, and in general, her chakra cast is clearly in the database. It will be the easiest thing, I thought. However, the question is how to get it? However, there is one idea. May Toby forgive me. Somewhere in the Akatsuki hideout, an unsuspecting Obito hiccuped. Having outlined the approximate arrangement of things, I created a clone who was supposed to find this Hokage and follow her, in the best case, dispel after putting a seal. That's what I decided. All I had to do was wait. An hour later the clone disappeared. Sake? How corny, Tsunade-sama. However, it's not for me to complain. I was happy. Obviously, now half the bar will scare away, and it will be easier, I thought as I put on the mask. Having created one seal, to separate the flows of chakra, or in common parlance, sleep, my joy, fall asleep after drinking. In general, on a simple person, it would hardly even work, but on a drunk, as they say, everything will work. Having chosen the time, I moved to the back door of the establishment and walked through it. Apparently she's sitting alone, so now let's have some fun. I went under the surface of the building and, like a whack-a-mole technique, moved under her desk. After waiting until her assistant went home, I emerged from the ground. Wah! You, who are you? And what are you doing here? She asked, clearly having already drunk quite a bit. Who am I? It doesn't matter, you can call me Toby. And now, it's time to go to bed, Hokage-sama. I said, intensely directing chakra into my left eye so that it would glow like a Sharingan. She even almost sobered up, but she didn't have time. I touched her earlier, she fell asleep. That's right, this is what the doctor ordered, I thought as I pumped out a piece of chakra from her for the cast. After a minute or two, I went back underground without waiting for the opening. If she remembers, it will be fun, but it doesn't matter. Let Obito be a little nervous for the task that he gave me. However, he didn't force me to do it, I began to think. However, it's all the same, not pinning him down, it's the same as refusing. Before I had time to think about it, I almost burned myself to death. Stop, that's enough. Now I was almost spotted, I thought, looking at the ninja running past who did not notice me. After that, I went into the house and changed clothes, deciding to take a bath. Having finished with all this business, I decided to get ready and move to the storage room. The time was approaching midnight. Great, now or never, I thought again, changing my appearance. Having gone to the storage room, I looked around. There was no one nearby, only guards apparently around the perimeter. It's good that I use her cast, otherwise they would have burned me already, and I don't need it, I thought. Having made my way inside with the help of intangibility, I began to look for the right room, and found it. After looking around, I decided to take action and created a barrier with a hint of her chakra. Having entered it and cancelled the supply of chakra from the cast, I created clones and we discussed everything. Having put it on myself again, I went back out and went to search for information. So, what do we have? The 8-gate technique and its abilities. It's interesting. It seems that the green beast of Konoha uses it, so obviously it won't be superfluous, I thought. I threw it into the distance into the barrier, to the clones, making sure that I hit it. I continued. Oops, let's take the techniques of Tobirama Senju in his Hiraition basic version, so to speak, I thought again, passing it all the same way. The seal, of the god of death? The power of 100? And one more thing. So, and this, we won't just replace it by rewriting it, but we'll also remember it. If they want to study these scrolls, it serves them right for treason. I decided, transferring new data to the barrier. While I continued to search, because dissatisfied hums and growls were heard under the barrier. I agree with you, absolutely agree, that's all I could think. After some time, I found something else interesting. The techniques of that dead third fart, however, will do. I took it. Jackpot, Hiraition Yondaime, Rasengan Yondaime and Edo Tensei, I rejoiced in silence. It's strange, of course, that they shoved him here, and not to the Tobiramans, but yes. With him. I thought. Having transferred everything under the barrier, I continued my research, but I didn't find anything extraordinary. However, there was still enough interesting. Returning to the barrier, I sat down and thought about everything and about Naruko. I tried my best to isolate myself from this today. I feel that everything is fine with her, but then, it's good that I left, you never know, I just thought about it. Okay, first thing, we need to rewrite and replace all this and leave, the cast will last for a long time, not enough, I concluded. Having started helping our clones, we soon copied everything we could and sealed the originals. I threw the fakes back and quickly dispelling the clones and removing the barrier, using a cast in advance, burned out the main traces of chakra and teleported. Having sat down, I waited at the window. Half an hour later, everything was quiet, which means everything was fine. With the help of a clone, I decided to find Tsunade. Her seal must be removed, otherwise questions will arise. Having created him and given him the task, I sent him off to do something. He disappeared after about 40 minutes with the goal successfully completed. I just smiled at how the matter went so smoothly and just went to bed. I woke up, generally fine, got up again and went for the typical procedures. I did all this with sadness and without much enthusiasm. I hope they return soon, as I want to see her again, that's all I thought. After all this, I went to the training ground. Of course, not on foot. So, let's try again to create this Ovo Susanoo, I thought, straining my Rinnegan. I tried to feel the flows of chakra, or imagine structures around me in the shape of a skeleton, ribs or hands, so far nothing. I tried, for quite a long time, until I got tired and fed up. What's wrong, huh? I understand that it takes a long time and is almost impossible to master, but what? Maybe something is missing? I thought again. Perhaps, first I need the Uchiha's flesh. Perhaps then it would make some sense, however, I doubt that this is so, but anyway, let's put it off for now, I decided on that. Then, I think it's worth starting with Hiraition. He clearly needs to be studied as soon as possible, however, he is tied not only to Fwine but also to the summoning technique, and this is a problem, I concluded. Having decided on that, I continued my training, having decided to start analyzing the Hiraition formula at home. The training itself was of the same type and did not stand out in any way. Again, I continued to concentrate chakra outside the body into a cube, however, that's basically what I was doing. We need to increase chakra reserves and control, as much as possible today, and in the near future I will focus on this, I decided in my thoughts. For several hours, there was no particular success, but still, as they say, not everything at once, especially with chakra. Tired, I went home and had little strength, so I decided to take a break. A couple of hours later. After I rested, I decided to eat and cook again alone, constantly thinking about her return and confessing to her, I hope she returns soon. I didn't have any special thoughts, so I took the prepared dishes and went to the table. After eating, I carried and washed the dishes and equipment and went to the table to disassemble the tag. After another couple of hours. Your division, it's an ass, I said looking at the gendarme's mark. It doesn't seem to be difficult, there are few blocks, but here it is tied to a targeted call. In general, unfortunately this is clearly not for now. Is there a night aim option somewhere? I asked myself mentally, sorting through the scrolls. After a couple of minutes, having found it and putting the improved one aside, I began to analyze it. 30 minutes later, the first results were in. What to say, what not to say, and the second one was clearly a genius. He created this technique even before Hashirama married Mito and obviously without the personal intervention of Uzumaki, I thought. The mark itself was a painting of symbols united into blocks, which were intertwined into the main joint in the form of a wheel, with a core from the main formula in the center. There are at least several hundred kanji here, I thought. On the one hand, Minato's formula may seem simpler, however, it is more closely intertwined with his summoning technique, while the second's is only in general terms, but still there is more of it. I thought in contradictions. With these thoughts in mind, I began to disassemble the blocks and compare them with the technique of the fourth. Unexpectedly, there were several common blocks, with the exception of the one similar to the call. There was only 1 out of 5. Well, this is clearly interesting. In any case, I will have to create my own mark, but first, I need to study the principle of its operation. I thought about this. Time passed until night for comparisons and tests. There were no results yet, but they were in the right direction. I was completely tired, both mentally and physically. I was itching to sleep. I hope I'll see her tomorrow. End POV Naruto. POV Naruko. We just returned from a mission. I haven't been able to find a place for myself for the second day. Even though the rug calms me down, I can't forget his words. I stood there on the threshold of my own house and could not enter. A trifle, what are you afraid of? Go already, you'll start earlier, you'll finish earlier, he stated the obvious. Pulling myself together, I entered the house. Everything was the same, only the scrolls on the table were more visible. Naruto was nowhere to be seen and I began to panic again. Calm down, have you forgotten or what? He either trains late or sits behind these scrolls and then sleeps, like a gopher. He calmed me down. But really, he's probably just sleeping right now. I'll go and have a look. Thank you, Ku, I said only mentally, heading to the bedroom. Walking there, I saw him and he was really sleeping. He looked so peaceful. I quietly took a chair and sat next to him, looking at him, not knowing how to start a conversation. A few minutes later, I involuntarily began to stroke his head. I didn't notice how he woke up, apparently from my touch. I didn't know where to start. He looked at me, and I couldn't say a word. Naruto. I didn't have time to do anything further. He just jumped up and hugged me. Fool, the main thing is that everything is fine with you, the rest doesn't matter, he said. Not understanding anything, I hugged him back. Is this a good sign? He's not angry. That's a small thing, but you were afraid. However, he has strange emotions. Even I don't understand what's on his mind, he answered me. I didn't understand anything. If even Kurama doesn't understand, it's strange. After a couple of minutes, he walked away from me, taking my hand. Let's go, you're probably hungry. Are you off the road? Especially after there is conversation, he said vaguely. I just nodded and went with him, thinking in my head, what does he want to say? This is definitely something important. Knowing my brother, he won't stress out so much over trifles, I thought. Everything is very strange. I don't understand what he wants and it's scary, I thought. I hope he's not offended by me, for what happened, please, I begged. The meal passed in silence, which he again prepared. This time, everything was quiet, even too quiet. There was an oppressive silence. When it was all over, he washed the dishes and told them to wait for him in the living room. I sat with mixed feelings and on pins and needles, not knowing what to expect or what happened to him. But as luck would have it, this rug was silent, completely. He even cut off the communication channel. About 20 minutes later he came and sat down next to me, putting my head on his knees. This action calmed me down. I remembered those few evenings that we managed to spend together, as well as his eyes. There was something different in them. Naruko, he started. Somehow, you confessed to me not so long ago that you love me, he continued. Then, I couldn't answer this clearly, and in general, I didn't understand the feeling, he said. And inside me, everything shrank. Will he really cut everything off now? He understood everything now. Before I had time to give free rein to my thoughts, I just shed a tear, but he continued. But now, I can and will say with all seriousness. I love you too, my stupid eldest little sister, and as a sister, and as a girl, he finished. Whoa. Bro. Attic, did you accept my feelings? I are so happy. This is now the best day of my life, I just can't describe it in words. I was thinking straight out of order. Congratulations small thing, I'm happy for you. However, I think Minato and Kushina clearly turned over somewhere, perhaps several times. He naturally laughed as he spoke. I didn't even pay attention to him, I was just happy. It happened, something I never dreamed of, only sometimes, in dreams. My tears only intensified, creating paths flowing down through my cheeks, down my lips. Well, don't cry, you're the sunshine, my sunshine, right? He asked, highlighting one word. Yes, brother, now I'm your sunshine, I answered him happily through tears. He took me by the back of my head, lifted me up and sat me on his knees next to him. Well, then I'll ask you directly, well, for the sake of decency, will you be my girlfriend, sister? He asked naturally in mockery. Yes, I will be yours and only yours, just like you, only mine, I answered, highlighting the last word. In general, I didn't really feel reality right now, it seemed like I was somewhere here. But part of my mind was somewhere in heaven. He smiled, taking me by the back of my head again, but now tilting it towards his face. I love you, sis, don't scare me like that again, okay? He asked. I'll try. I can't promise, but I love you too, I answered. Everything slowed down, our faces were a few centimeters apart. We simultaneously reached out and slowly intertwined our lips together, we kissed. My lips were clearly salty, I felt it myself a little, but this is a minor thing. I could only close my eyes from pleasure and endless happiness. Noting before that my brother did the same. The kiss was long and sensitive, there was nothing unnecessary or vulgar in it. When it ended, we moved our faces away from each other, opening our eyes. I'm just happy. I don't know what to say, I thought. It's a trifle, in such cases they don't say anything more, everything important, you have already said, and the rest was done by your actions, Kurama deigned to answer, abruptly cutting off the communication channel again. I just with a happy smile, brushing away the tears that had already begun to dry, settled down on his shoulder. He just put his hand on my head, stroking it, without saying anything. It's true, in such a situation, words are not needed, I realized the rightness of this rug. We sat there for a while, but later I lay down on his lap again, it was comfortable there. He did not stop touching my hair and stroking my face, repeating these actions. And so, he looks into my eyes again, and I into his, he leans in, and I reach out to meet him. We now, as a single mechanism, understand each other's actions with one movement. We merged in a kiss again, he held my body and kissed me. I was fingering his hair. After half an hour. Well, I think you're tired from the road, and here I am, it's you. Sorry if, he didn't have time to finish, but I just pecked him on the lips. Nothing, honey, I understand everything, but yes, I'm really tired, I said, stretching slightly. How nice it is to call him that, and he's obviously just happy about it. Then, let's go to the arms, and then rest, he said, picking me up in his arms. All I had time to do was squeal and burst into laughter just like him. He carried me onto the bed and laid me down, but I insisted that he lie down next to me. It's better for me to sleep when you're around, so please, I said. Without having time to add anything more, because he immediately fulfilled this unfinished request and laid down next to her. I just hugged him and laid my head on him. Sorry, don't mind if you become my pillow, I asked slightly pitifully. What can I do with you? Sleep the sun, he said, kissing me on the head and stroking it. I was in awe of this and really tired and all this excitement, and the task always makes me tired even after eating during the day. In his arms, I didn't even notice how I fell asleep, but now everything is new, because I was truly happy. POV Naruto. I lay there and just looked at her. Everything went much better than I expected, everything was just wonderful. Sometimes I just want a quiet life. However, me in peace? Funny, but now, when the situation has changed, it doesn't look so impossible, but what to do with the thirst for blood, I thought. It's really a problem, fighting with your sister. From time to time it's okay for sparring, and maybe a little more dangerous, I thought. However, as with Obito or Roots, obviously not, I didn't have an answer to this question. Only one thing I know for sure, most likely, I will have to accept what she wants, of course, except for Konoha. I would, of course, destroy her just like that, but that would be too easy. Me again went into himself. Betraying them, just like they did, would be fair, on the one hand, but to whom? Iwa, Kyumo, or Kiri? Pfft. That's also an option for me, Suna. They obviously don't take them out. I already knew about that Chunin exam. I looked at her again. She really is an angel, even when she sleeps. I gently ran my hand through her hair, removing it from her face so that it wouldn't tickle her. And he returned to his thoughts again. Yes, in general, they are against Konoha. Now they obviously won't go. Small villages? What about them? If they united, it would of course be bad, but so. I've already reached a dead end. What's not an option is that I'm complete. However, I have a couple of ideas for this, but it's too early. However, all the same, I'm not the only one who decides. Again I turned my gaze to her. Well, my sweet and stupid older sister, I hope that everything will be fine with us. Yes, with us, now we are together. I allowed myself to smile. Having thought a little about this whole situation, I fell out of reality until one moment. I have a couple of things to do, and I don't want to sleep. I just got up a few hours ago, I thought. Freeing my hands and carefully folding the seal crosswise, I summoned a clone. He just looked at the view from the side and smiled. Yes, he didn't even grin, and that's good. I used the Rinnegan and switched places with him. He apparently understood everything and took the pose. I'm lying like a log forever. Nodding to this, I went back to study Hiraishin. A few hours later. Well, it's time to eat. There's no point in waking up my sister and it's already evening, almost night outside, I thought. If anything, I'll leave her some food. She'll obviously get up early. It's better for her not to disrupt her routine. Unlike me, she follows it. I nodded to my thoughts. Having put away all the developments and originals in print, I went to the kitchen to cook. In 2 hours. After all this, I decided to go meditate a little more and was transported to the training ground. Having created several clones and obtained basic marks for them, using my Hiraishin mark, I sent them away. And he began to train his chakra and its control. The cube, however, is only barely making progress, too little, however, not much time has passed yet. Having already finished, I decided to finally train the katon. I haven't been paying enough attention to it lately. The rest of the time, I trained its release and tried to improve control over the elements, to reduce costs with equal strength of the technique, which in turn can slightly help in mastering the cube. After some time, it was already quite late. The clones did not achieve anything significant, however, they can already feel the mark, which indicates that the communication unit on the chakra was installed correctly, as well as the marking. However, it is still far from being in an acceptable state. Having finished with everything and getting ready, I went home, naturally, through space. Having appeared there, I, already slightly tired, decided to go straight to bed. Only after changing clothes and replacing my clone, who had been playing pillow all day, I went to bed myself. I woke up slightly unexpectedly. Someone was obviously kissing me, but I know who. Opening my eyes, I noticed Naruko lying next to me and kissing me. "Good morning, dear brother," she added the last word later. "Good morning to you too, little sister," I said, kissing her on the lips. I don't know how much time has passed, but it's still relatively early, but at least I got some sleep. "Have you been up for a long time? Are you hungry?" I asked, getting up and dragging her along with me. She succumbed to this and simply sat next to me, and I hugged her waist from behind. "Well, not that long ago, but for a couple of hours, I lay there and watched you sleep," she answered while I kissed her neck. "And yes, I'm a little hungry. Is there anything to eat?" She asked me in a half-turn, kissing me on the cheek. "Of course there is, I left it for you yesterday." I didn't want to wake up. I left the clone and went about my business until I returned, I answered her, patting her on the top of her head. "Well, let's go then?" she asked with a smile, taking my hand in hers. I didn't answer anything, I just let her lead me. 40 minutes later. "Brother, what are you going to do?" This splinter asked me while sitting on my lap. I don't know. In general there are plans to study Harem first. But then, I didn't have time to finish. Harem? Where, and how do you plan to study it? This walking hurricane literally jumped out of me. Wait, in general, the day before yesterday, after everything. I needed to cool down, I started. Naruko immediately lowered her ardor a little. Apparently she understood what I was talking about. To distract myself, I went to training, and in general, I was there until the evening, I continued. And according to Harem, even earlier I decided to take it and a number of other dangerous techniques away from these. They even had a lot of fuina, traitors, I said, barely restraining my rage. After all, these clown not only didn't help, no, they themselves betrayed their allies and even helped in their plunder and took for themselves, most likely, most of what they could. Naruko, seeing my condition, only came up and sat back, trying to calm me down. And strangely enough, it worked out for her, although not right away. In general, I left after about 10 minutes. "Forgive me, brother, I won't mention this again, I understand it myself," she said sadly. "Everything is fine, honey, I'm here because, forget it, it's nothing," I told her, hugging and kissing her temple. After a couple of minutes, when she calmed down, I decided to report. "In general, now, I think I'll go to the bathroom, and then to training. I really wanted to go." "Stop. I'll go with you." This little ray spoke confidently. Are you sure? We only have one bathroom, right?" I asked in bewilderment. "Certainly. Or are you ashamed of me?" she asked slightly playfully. "My mother Madara, no, of course I understand everything, but isn't it too early? However, in a simple bath there seems to be nothing like that." Not really, you just don't think it's too early for this, or, I didn't have time to finish. I'm not talking about that, just take a bath." She became the complexion of a true Uzumaki. That was even fun, but that's not about that now. "Well, let's go, bath partner," ha ha ha, I laughed even despite the evil pokes in the side, from an equally evil person. 30 minutes later. The bath was filled. I decided to go in first, isolating myself from this world as much as possible. I undressed and climbed into the bathroom. There was a lemon scene that Uncle YouTube condemns. Thank you, honey, me too, I needed it, I said, reaching out and kissing her on the lips. You're welcome, honey, we're a couple, so this is normal for us, she concluded. I was just thrilled by her movements and how she washed me, but it soon ended. After an hour. We were at the training ground again and trained. Naruko honed the basic seals that she had learned with the clones. I sent mine to Harem, and I myself continued to increase chakra with the cube. The clones were trying to master it, and Naruko watched it all from time to time. She was also interested, since yesterday, they had worked hard on the seal and were trying to move to the mark. But they were dispelled. I grimaced from time to time, they were simply torn to pieces. Even though there is contact with the mark, its content is clearly not the same, I thought with a grimace. While time passed smoothly, the clones again sat down to think about Harem, and I continued to strain my chakra into the cube. After a couple of hours, Naruko had to leave. It turns out they were having a training session. However, I was also not happy with this, as was she, but there was nothing to be done. After kissing me goodbye, she left to run errands. I stayed and continued my training, alternating between katan, intangibility, and chakra control. A few hours later. I returned home pretty tired. Having prepared some food and having eaten, I had no strength or desire to even wash the dishes. So, putting the rest in the refrigerator, I trudged off to rest. Soon Naruko also returned. I sent a clone to check on her, but she kissed him and received all the information. She dispelled it. And an hour later, she joined me on the bed. It was still not the latest time, but we were clearly already tired. So we lay together on the bed thinking about our own things. Listen, Naru, do you think everything will work out for us? She asked somehow quietly. I only raised my voice, but she understood what I meant. In terms of, you and me, can we be happy in where? Because here, no, she answered even more quietly. I took her head in my hands and stroked it quietly and calmly. You know. I won't say that I'm sure that everything will be easy, that everything will go smoothly. However, you are with me and I'm with you, and at any moment, we can leave, and the main thing is that we exist from each other, right? I asked her. She nodded, having calmed down slightly. Apparently her slight blues had passed. However, perhaps she was just thinking about the future. That's also good. In this position, we fell asleep, talking and sometimes kissing. I woke up relatively early. It wasn't even noon yet, but the sun had long since risen. Looking around, I noticed that my son was sleeping on me. I carefully ran my hand through her hair, trying not to wake her up. Sometimes, it seems to me that I clearly don't deserve this, that she is too ideal for me, I thought, looking into her peaceful face. However, I am happy only because, that she is happy and I don't need anything more, I finished. I lay there and continued to finger her hair, trying not to wake her, but after a few minutes she opened her eyelids and began to rub them. It looked terribly cute. Again, I don't know how many times in recent days this word has flashed through my head. Good morning, sleepy princess. How did you sleep? I asked my sister. Good brother, it's great with you, she answered through a yawn. Having already woken up, she reached out to me, and I reached out to her and we kissed. Without hesitating, I picked her up and, under her stunned look and piercing squeal, dragged her to the procedures. A couple of hours later. We had already eaten and were getting ready for training. Once I got ready, I took us to the training ground. We scattered to different corners so as not to disturb each other, but I began by concentrating the energy, again training the cube. The clones continued their notes on Harem, and some of them trained. An hour later, one clone gave a signal. Hey, Chief Citizen, we have a problem here, the mark is on this. Karen beeps, one of the clones said. Naruko heard this and flew up to me with the clones because she didn't understand anything. Well, repeat what you said, I asked the clone. Apparently, Sasuke's group was attacked, most likely. I felt weak flows of chakra when I was concentrating to train the Hiraishin and barely felt the mark left on it, he answered in detail. Brother, it's her, right? Are they in danger? The sister was dumbfounded. I thought about the situation, I tried to feel the mark and understand where they were, but apparently they were not nearby. I'm not sure, but most likely yes, but I'm trying to feel the mark, it's difficult, I answered. Naruko was silent for a minute, but then she couldn't stand it. Naru. I understand that Sasuke did a lot of bad things, and in general you didn't get along with her, but she's my friend after all, she began. Well, Karen, she is like us Uzumaki, and she is alone, she is lonely, please help them if they are in danger, I asked. She took my hand and looked into my eyes. Looking into her eyes, I saw only a plea. She really worried about both of them, and I don't even understand who more, for one of the last Uzumaki or Uchiha. Her tears began to flow and she even managed to let go of my hand, but I already felt the mark. Taking her hand, I pulled her back to me and kissed her with feeling. I don't know what will happen there, but it's far away. I felt the mark, please be safe. I myself wouldn't want Karen to die because I think like you, she's still a part of our family, I answered her. But, since you want me to help Sasuke too, then only for the sake of you and Itachi, without saying a word more, but with a peck on her lips, I disappeared into space. I appeared near Karen. She was wounded and apparently not weakly, one mercenary was about to finish her off, but then I appeared and again, like last time, intercepted her and slashed her in the throat. Looking around, I noticed 2 members of her team and they were also fighting, there were more opponents. Karen, can you hold out okay? I asked her. She just nodded, biting herself for some reason. Turning around, I noticed that a couple of morons were rushing towards me. Why morons? Where can you see shinobi running towards the enemy screaming at the top of their lungs? Letting them approach me, I missed their blows. When they realized something, it was too late. Turning my head, I switched to the weapon of an already dead enemy, and rip open the tendons of one. Letting out a wild cry, he falls. I managed to pierce his throat and instantly changed to his weapon, closer to the second one. He had already gotten his bearings, but didn't have time to do anything. I forced him into close combat. He was so scared that he just took it to the fullest. A few seconds later, he just came to his senses and decided to take revenge, when I again let him through, and as soon as he passed through me with a roundhouse, I ripped his throat open. I looked at Karen, who was a few meters away. She was no longer bleeding, but there was no time for that now. I turned my head and saw a picture of 2 people fighting. The third was passed out and apparently the first to drop out, apparently from her team, and she was against 3, white, 2. Apparently they hadn't noticed me yet, or didn't understand who I was. Having grabbed one of the white-haired opponents, I exchanged for his weapon, in front of his face. But he suddenly jumps back sharply and shouts. Guys here Jigaku, Orohoshi-san, you didn't warn us about this, he screamed. The fight even stopped and apparently the one who was called Morohoshi responded. Oh, finally an interesting opponent, otherwise it's all some kind of trifle, he said, looking at the exhausted and wounded Sasuke. Her partner was clearly not in the best condition, but relatively intact, like the one in the cut. Here's the jackpot, guys, take whoever you want, the little black one over there is almost ready, but don't spoil the goods. He said. You will help me with him, we will definitely get rich for his head. Unlike the little black one, not 2, but all the great countries want him. But Morohoshi, after all, kill us, he didn't have time to finish. Pup, are you an S-class shinobi or a genin? For his head, we will live a long time, he answered as if he was reading a speech. And so, he was already rushing at me. The same guy, apparently 7 years older than me, pulled himself together. Although he was clearly afraid, he jumped into close combat. It's interesting, however, we'll see what happens from this. That's all I had time to think. Two people were pressing on me, Kei and this one, Morohoshi. At first, I played by their rules, trying to test their defenses and capabilities. You obviously can't kill them that easily. At the same time, trying to remember where I saw this gang leader. Exactly, the bingo book, the renegade Kyumo, one of the strongest, often put together licensed gangs, where later, only a few survived, greedy and extremely vile, the elements of Doton, and, I forgot, I thought while dodging and parrying blows. Suddenly, Morohoshi jumped away, making seals, and I recognized them, the dog of lightning. You're Raiden, this is the second element and how I forgot, I thought, letting the blows of 1K pass through me. After he missed and went through, I tried to hit him from behind and almost succeeded, but he parried only a little with his katana. But he's not bad, his reaction is excellent, after all, it's not for nothing that he has an S rank, I thought. But nevertheless, he received a wound in the side, trying to break the distance. Meanwhile, Morohoshi completed his technique and I wasted no time in making the horse seal. Raiden, lightning dog. He shouted. Kato, fiery destruction, I answered, blowing out fire. The technicians flew at each other and Kei, holding his side, tried to attack from behind. The moment I turn around and notice the kunai, I change to him and rip his throat open. It's a pity for the guy, however, he died quickly and for nothing, I thought. The technicians ended the confrontation, with my victory, although Raiden is stronger than Kato, but not mine. Morohoshi turned out to be nearby, I let his attack pass through me, and a taijutsu fight ensued. He clearly dominated, sometimes I missed the blows, I was able to hurt him a couple of times. Yes. Boy, give up already, you're just a commodity that I'm selling, this crazy guy was yelling almost in my face. The blow, he dodges, I bend my arm like Obito did then, and hitting him, I disorientate him. His rage is about to destroy him, I push him away and jumping between my hands, I touch chakra from my legs to my torso, he doesn't have time to block, my cold calculation, this time, plays a good game for me. I repeat exactly as before, in flight I blow out a fireball, it flies at him, but he jumps back. I, literally flying through my fire, towards his running back, throw a kunai, he doesn't notice it. After a couple of seconds, I change to him and punch his body. You, how, what, he wheezes. Trash, you don't need to know this, goodbye, I say, punching his throat and turning his hand all the way, thereby cutting off his head. I looked around and saw that the battle had stopped, Sasuke was clearly wounded and not weakly, he was even more or less white, a fat man in a state of death. Well, what, team point, your leader is dead, and the next ones are you, I said, changing to a katana of one, next to Sasuke. He doesn't have time to do anything, I tear up the body from the liver to the chest. I manage to pierce the second one's side, he jumps away. Raiden, lightning strike technique, I shouted, making seals with lightning speed. He didn't have a chance, a whole stream of lightning struck him from 2 meters away. Looking at this, Civ, I turned to the white man and his enemy. Please, have mercy, said the remaining misunderstanding from their team. Did you want to spare them, or, against your will, did you attack them? I asked him, tilting my head to the side. He didn't answer anything, just running his eyes from one face to another, the white one simply fell on his sword, very exhausted. The last enemy couldn't put together even a few words. Well, that means you chose death, I say, exchanging for the tanto that fell from his hand. And in a parallel position to him, looking behind him, I simply rip up my throat, again turning my hand until it falls away. Afterwards, exhaling slightly, he turned to them, but they were silent. Mentally raising my eyes to the sky, I approached Sasuke and examined her. A minute later, when I finished, I gave the verdict, he will live. But then, I noticed that a piece of flesh had been cut off from her side. Oops, what I needed, I'll take it, there's a jar of cryogen, I thought. Taking a step back, I created several clones, giving one of them a mental command in advance to seal that piece. And he himself went to Karen, yet she was clearly more seriously wounded. Having approached her, I began to examine her, only superficially. It already showed a number of problems. Although by some miracle the wounds closed, by the way it is not clear how, she is terribly exhausted and her organs are apparently also damaged. If you don't intervene right now, she will die. Naru. I will probably die. I'm sorry, that I'm so, she didn't have time to finish. Be quiet. If you don't, you'll definitely die, and if so, then my sister will kill me and drag me out of the other world and kill me again, I said, a little sarcastically. She even ate a little, but didn't say anything, apparently accepting my demands. Having created several more clones, I urgently began applying a stabilizing and healing seal.